Hello, good morning. It is 7 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
Is West Streeting's deal for the doctors good enough to end the Christmas strikes? Union members have their say in a vote.
The US seizes an oil tanker near Venezuela. The president accuses Donald Trump of piracy, and things could still escalate.
Seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later.
Meanwhile, the Venezuelan opposition leader, Maria Mercado, emerges from hiding in Oslo after secretly travelling there to get her Nobel Prize.
We're getting an update on the trial of Luigi Mangione, the man charged with killing a healthcare boss in the United States, as new evidence that's come out this week.
Plus, we'll hear how hundreds of thousands of migrants could be illegally overstaying their visas because they think the UK is a soft touch.
There's new hope this morning that the resident doctors' strike due to happen just before Christmas could be called off. The trade union representing the doctors say it will consult its members on a new offer from the government which improves jobs and training opportunities but doesn't change pay.
The Health Secretary, though, West Streeting, is still pretty furious. He says the British Medical Association should delay the strike until January, but instead the verdict from members will only come back 2 days before the strikes are due to start on the 17th of December.
Well, as you may have seen, Rob Powell is here. He's sneaking into shot a little early there. couldn't wait to get on to join us to update this. Rob, talk us through the moving parts of what's changed in this offer, because as Sophie said, it's oddly, it's not the pay that's changed, it's sort of the job opportunity.
Yeah, it's about specialist training posts, which there are high levels of competition for. The government's basically offered to expand them, but also is saying it will pass legislation to basically prioritise UK doctors, or English doctors, I should say, doctors in England, resident doctors, over international recruits for these sort of sought-after training posts. They've also put not money into the pay packet, but they've said they'll basically cover some expenses like exam fees as well. I think what's really interesting about this, though, is the kind of the negotiation that's going on around this, because those strikes are due to start on Wednesday. The BMA have said they will put this to their members in an online ballot, but that only closes on Monday. And the problem is that when you have industrial action like this, hospitals sort out rotas, cancel treatments well in advance of 2 days before the strike starts. So the problem is, even if the BMA call off the strike on Monday, a lot of the damage will already be done in terms of cancelled treatments. You know, it won't be as bad, but the point the Health Secretary is making is that that's too late to make this decision. So what, I think, is a pretty kind of canny move by Wes Streeting, he has said, all right, I'll extend your strike mandate into the new year, call this strike off now. If the results on Monday is that you want to reject this offer, you can strike in the new year instead, and at least sort of save the NHS the extra pressure next week. At the moment, it feels like the BMA are not going for that, though. But that is why Wes Streeting is now pretty furious about this and has issued some pretty harsh words.
I'm really interested in some of the details on this as well, because I'll be honest, I didn't really realise the intense competition for spaces until I started looking into the story a bit more closely, because demand has surged. And what I think is interesting, so 20,000 foreign doctors come to the UK every year, but we reject about 16,000 med school applicants. And this is because of money, right? It's cheaper for us to import trained doctors from abroad rather than subsidise training in the UK.
And then the point that was being made, I think, by the chair of the Health Select Committee, Leila Moran, yesterday, was that actually in making this offer, do you make it, given our reliance on bringing people in from overseas to work in the NHS, do you create a two-tier system and actually create another problem where you make it less attractive for people to come over to the UK? So it's just the difficulty, isn't it? It's sort of like whack-a-mole. You try and solve one problem and another one pops up. It's interesting I find Wes Streeting's tactics in this pretty interesting because, he is really not... Yesterday in the Commons, he said, this is one of the most shameful episodes in the long history of the BMA. He talked about them being moaning minis a week or so ago as well.
Sitting just there.
Sitting just here, yeah. And I think what he's trying to do, and what the government's been trying to do in general, is sort of carve out the BMA leadership from the membership. He's trying to go past the leadership and talk directly to resident doctors and say, look, are you prepared to do this to the NHS? I think government points at certain data sets that show that I think about 50%, there was about a 50% turnout on the latest strike ballot. So even though the number of people in that turnout was very high that voted for industrial action, I think they sense that maybe there's a waning of will among the actual membership for this. The BMA, on the other hand, insists that that's not the case.
What I think is really interesting is that there has also, we put this to one of the BMA's leadership on resident doctors, there's also been a waning in public opinion and support in a way that it was pretty universal post-pandemic support for all of the striking members of the NHS. This might shift it around a little bit because I think where the public get a bit upset is on just the pure point of pay rises. Yes, if you date it back to 2010, they still haven't got fully inflation-matched pay rises. But in the last few years, they've got quite a lot. Everybody's under the cosh. We've just had the budget. Taxes have gone up. What I think the details that have emerged in the last 24 hours show is this wasn't the only issue, perhaps not even the top issue. So if the BMA and their members do go ahead to accept this without extra boosts to pay rises, but on an area that I think probably most people kind of feel a bit of sympathy for. Hold on, they've trained to be a doctor. It's been pretty expensive, but they're not getting the job offer. I think it sort of slightly changes the dynamic again relative to Wes Streeting.
I think Wes Streeting is trying to sort of... I think he recognises maybe some of those shifting public dynamics and is trying to work off that as well. I think the fact that it's Christmas and it's a time, there will be people, if this action goes ahead, that maybe thought they'd have their operation done and dusted and be home in time for Christmas that may not now. Little things like that cut quite deep.
Yeah.
And so, obviously really important for people waiting for their treatment in the NHS, but eventually it comes back to the government's door and the Health Secretary's door, so it's important politically as well.
Rob, thanks very much indeed.
Now, amid rising tensions, Venezuela has accused the US of piracy after an oil tanker was seized off the country's coast. The US Attorney General said the vessel was involved in shipping sanctioned oil. So
there was this really dramatic footage that's been released by the US government, actually, and it seems to show troops descending onto the ship from helicopters, armed as well. This is David Bevins.
High stakes on the high seas. This was the moment US forces swooped on an oil tanker off Venezuela. Streaming out across the deck, a bold operation in broad daylight. Armed officers intercepting a vessel suspected of smuggling fuel in defiance of sanctions.
It was seized for a very good reason.
The president following developments from the White House.
We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later.
And as for the oil on board?
I assume we're going to keep the oil.
In the last 4 months, the US has bombed more than 20 boats, killing nearly 90 people, framing it as an operation against drug traffickers. But observers think the build-up in the region, warships, a nuclear submarine and F-35 jets could point to regime change. And the Venezuelan president remains defiant.
We are willing to fight to our last breath. We will remain loyal to the oath we have made to Commander Chavez and the people of Venezuela. It is not a time to vacillate. It is not a time to cower. It's a time for bravery. It's a time for combat. It's a time to build our Venezuelan homeland.
In a post online, US Attorney General Pam Bondi said they had executed a seizure warrant for a crude oil tanker used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran, and claimed it had been involved in an illicit oil shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organisations. Venezuela's foreign minister posted a statement on Instagram calling it a blatant theft and act of international piracy. It's a dramatic escalation in US tactics. Trump determined to shut off Venezuela's main source of revenue and will fuel speculation that airstrikes could follow. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
We can see those tensions really escalating there between the US and Venezuela. And I guess the other part of the story as well is what's going on with the opposition leader, because she's been in hiding for 11 months, but she has finally been seen in public. This is Maria Corina Machado, the new Nobel Peace Prize winner. She arrived in Norway. She did miss the awards ceremony, I should say, because she made this kind of secretive escape from her homeland.
Well, overnight, she emerged from her hotel balcony in Oslo, waving to an emotional crowd of supporters. Well, Maria Machado's daughter accepted the Nobel Peace Prize on her behalf, reading a speech written by her mother. And in it, she described the country's illegitimate president as a state terrorist. Our Europe correspondent, Alistair Buncombe, has the details.
Maria Corina Machado is the Venezuelan opposition leader who's been living in hiding for the past 18 months after the country's president, Nicolas Maduro, refused to concede elections in 2024. She didn't make it to Oslo in time to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in person. Instead, her daughter, Anna, who she hasn't seen for almost 2 years, collected the award and delivered the speech her mother wrote.
She wants to live in a free Venezuela, and she will never give up on that purpose. That is why we all know, and I know, that she will be back in Venezuela very soon.
In the audience were other South American leaders here in solidarity, and Edmundo Gonzalez, the little-known diplomat who ran and won the presidency when Machado was banned, but is now living in exile.
This prize carries profound meaning. It reminds the world that democracy is essential to peace.
Machado spoke about the pain of families split up and her dream of seeing the millions of Venezuelans who fled one day return. Some of those had travelled to Oslo.
She really deserved this prize, and we are quite happy and proud about it, and I think it's a prize for democracy.
Her journey out of Venezuela was dangerous. The details have been kept a secret. But she spoke to the Nobel Institute on the phone just before taking off.
As soon as I arrive, I will be able to embrace all my family and my children that I have not seen for 2 years, and so many Venezuelans, Norwegians that I know that share our struggle and our fight.
Machado's family, including her mother, are here in Oslo. She'll be finally reunited with them.
When you are faced with so much injustice, sometimes, you're naive and you think that the world is going to recognize what's going through, and you don't understand that you're facing a huge apparatus that's making propaganda to whitewash crimes.
Machado isn't the first Nobel laureate unable to attend, but her journey, which likely involved covert US help, is unprecedented.
In a way, the absence of Maria Corina Machado at the ceremony at the City Hall in Oslo just underlines the risks that she is taking in Venezuela, but equally, her determination to get here also reflects her determination to win that struggle for democracy in Venezuela.
Machado's presence in Oslo will be an embarrassment to President Nicolas Maduro at a time when Venezuela's leader finds himself caught between growing hostility at home and increasing antagonism abroad. US attacks on drug boats and a massive military presence in the region is raising the prospect of war. Maduro tried to prevent Maria Corina Machado from leaving Venezuela, but now that she has, he won't want her to return. Alistair Buncombe, Sky News in Oslo.
And more on that throughout the morning. Next up, a family is made homeless or threatened with homelessness every 5 minutes in England.
And look, it's getting colder, winter and Christmas approaching, and thousands are stuck in temporary accommodation or even sleeping rough as well. We can have a little look at where has been hardest hit by this. The southeast, in particular, 1 in 235 people are classified as homeless.
In the West Midlands, the figure's 1 in 198.
And in London, which is the worst affected, I mean, this is unbelievable. 1 in 45 people are homeless.
Unbelievable. The problem in London is particularly acute, as we said, totalling 97,140 children homeless in London. Well, Molly's here with us to chat about this. And Molly, this is new statistics that have come out today on all of this. I mean, London in particular, but everywhere, is really striking.
Yeah, it's pretty bad, particularly when you read those statistics. This is a new strategy. It's a 3-year strategy, and they're looking at a few different things, really. One is tackling rough sleepers, so they want to halve the number of people that are sleeping rough on the streets by 2030. Another is focused on prevention, so we hear so often people leaving sort of public institutions like prisons and they're homeless, and they want to prevent that from happening, so they're introducing this new law, duty to collaborate, they're calling it, so getting bodies to talk to each other, essentially, to try and prevent people from becoming homeless. And another is a big one we hear about a lot, which is temporary accommodation. So many of the people that are without homes are living for weeks on end in temporary accommodation. You pointed to some of the scale there, but it's pretty massive. In England alone, 382,000 people are considered to be homeless, and that's 350,000 in temporary accommodation. So you can understand why the government say it's a profound challenge, but some of their critics, though, really saying that they see these proposals as actually to be pretty weak, even Labour politicians. So Paula Barker, who chairs the parliamentary group on homelessness, and she said that measures are a depressing lack of meat on the bone. Andy Burnham saying freezing housing benefit at the budget again was a big issue for him. He's made it a big thing for him up in Manchester. And Shelter similarly saying the proposals don't go far enough, saying until more social homes are built, that the only way to actually get people off the streets is if you pay private rent. So a whole load of criticism, but the government say that they will really want to tackle it with 3 different sort of measures in place.
Molly, thank you very much indeed. Molly Malone speaking to us there. I mean, the figures, as Molly was saying, are really quite startling. And we can put them directly now to the Minister of State for Local Government and Homelessness, who is Alison McGovern. Great to have you on the programme. I mean, we just heard the situation. Homelessness is up 8% in the last year. The number in temporary accommodation at record levels. I mean, this is under a Labour government. What's going on?
Well, I am so glad that people are hearing these figures and understanding the scale of it, because I think a lot of us, when we walk around our city centres, you know, we see the rough sleeping, but I really worry about the people who are experiencing homelessness that we can't see, the kids in B&B accommodation, the young people sofa surfing. That is a big problem too, so I'm really glad that we are showing the scale of this.
Do you accept it's got worse under your watch?
I think it would be hard to turn around 14 years of Tory disaster on this issue in a year.
It's got worse, though. I think that's the thing, isn't it?
And that's why it was really important to publish this strategy before Christmas, to get our intentions set so that we can get on with making the changes that we need. You'll know that last week we published the child poverty strategy, which is about improving family incomes and bearing down on costs. That will help. You'll know that we're spending £39 billion doing as Shelter say that we should, building more social and affordable homes. That will help. This strategy today is about making sure that we prevent first. So you mentioned the duty to collaborate, which is really important. We're setting a new goal today to increase the rate at which we prevent homelessness. We measure the number of people coming forward to say, I might be made homeless. We want to track that and make sure that we increase the amount of homelessness we prevent.
So you've also pledged to halve rough sleeping, and you want to end the use of B&Bs by the end of the Parliament. I was quite struck in an interview that you gave with The Guardian where you said, I think we can do it. If we don't manage it, no one will judge me as harshly as I judge myself.
Yeah, because I've met some of those kids.
How will you judge yourself if you fail them?
I will feel that I have not done my job. I've met some of the kids in B&Bs. Since I first became a local councillor 20 years ago, I've known what it's like to be in temporary accommodation. It's no childhood. So we have to do something about it. I don't think anybody, as I said, will be doing their Christmas shopping at the moment, seeing, in some cases, people in tents, rough sleeping, and think that this is a sign of a country that's succeeding. So what we've seen in the data is that long-term rough sleeping is more and more of a problem now than it was in the past. And that's why we've got new money that we're announcing as part of this strategy to help people who've been on the streets for months and in some cases years.
Can I ask, because you talked there about people in tents, going and doing Christmas shopping, seeing people who are homeless, what should you do if someone who is homeless asks you for money? Should you give them money?
For a long time, I've thought that that's not the right way. Buy the big issue. Give to one of the homelessness charities. There's also advice if people go on StreetLink. If you Google StreetLink, you can report a rough sleeper, and there's also advice about practical things that you can do.
You shouldn't directly give cash
I think that there's other things that people can do to help
and why
and
is that?
support.
Because you think that it's, it means that they would spend it in a
No,
more...
you just don't know the circumstances of that person. Look, I'm not going to criticise anybody for having generosity in their heart, but I would say, if you want to help with homelessness, then give to those organisations. Go on the StreetLink website. You can always report somebody who's sleeping rough. That means that they'll be connected with a local support worker and they can get help. And that is the best way to support rough sleepers.
Junior doctors are putting the latest proposal from the government to their members. There is a bit of hope that the strike before Christmas might be called off. How kind of optimistic are you feeling?
Well, I listened to the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, in the House of Commons last night, and I thought it was clear he'd made a big, bold offer to the BMA leadership.
Hasn't moved on pay, I guess, though.
So yes, but, they've had a near 30% pay increase. Not many other people in the public sector have had anything like that. And we have a responsibility to all of our NHS staff, to nurses and cleaners and everybody, not just doctors. And lots of doctors know that. Lots of doctors are also, working really hard before Christmas. And I would say to the BMA leadership, be a part of what we're trying to do with the NHS. Help us rebuild and see this offer for what it is, which is a generous attempt to try and bring these strikes to an end.
I was really interested to see part of this deal, which is basically prioritising doctors from the UK for, training or jobs over foreign medics. And what I don't think I was really that aware of, to be honest, is the massive demand for jobs in the UK. We reject 16,000 med school applicants, but import 20,000 doctors from abroad. That's because it's cheaper to do that. That's right, isn't it?
Well, that decision was taken by previous government over the long term. They expanded medical school places, but not the training places that doctors need afterwards. And that is clearly a really big problem. So that's why Wes and Jim Mackey, the leader of the NHS, have made really big attempts really quickly to try and get more training places available. That will help.
Is it right to prioritise UK doctors?
Yes, of course. If people, grow up here and are committed, then they should be supported into our NHS. I'm very proud of the members of my constituency in Birkenhead who've come from all around the world to support our NHS. That's a consistent part of the NHS's history. People from the Commonwealth came to do that as well. But if young people growing up want to work for the NHS, we should make sure there's a pathway for them.
Just finally, can't help but ask, as you're a Liverpool fan, there's been a bit of a row going on with Mo Salah.
Honestly,
What's happening?
I'm expected to answer all sorts of questions. So I'm Team Liverpool, as per. I think it was really good for the team to get a win away in Europe. I'm hopeful that the good offices of Virgil van Dijk and others can smooth this over and bring Mo back into the camp.
Are you a bit frustrated by him, though? Has he been, throwing his toys out the pram?
I think he's been a great servant to LFC and, he can say his piece. But as ever with Liverpool Football Club, in the end, we're strongest when we're together, so we should get back in the camp and just work hard.
OK, there you go. Thanks very much. Alison McGovern there speaking to us from the government.
Stronger together was channeling some of the old, took me back to Brexit.
Yeah.
Interesting, timely, following the comments from David Lammy last week. Different story, going off on a tangent.
Very true.
Anyway.
Very true. Coming up, we are going to be talking about Luigi Mangione, who is the man charged with the murder of a healthcare boss over in the United States.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter. Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics. I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think is really unusual? Mornings with Roger and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Let's remind you of the top stories this morning. The British Medical Association will consult members on a new offer from the government, which could avert a walkout by resident doctors in the run-up to Christmas. Medics in England are due to go on strike for 5 days from next Wednesday in their row over pay and concerns over training positions.
Venezuela has accused the US of piracy after an oil tanker was seized off the country's coast. Donald Trump announced the operation during a meeting of business leaders at the White House in what's been described as a major escalation in the campaign against drug smugglers.
Venezuela's opposition leader has made her first public appearance in months after covertly travelling to Oslo to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Marina Corina Machado stood from a balcony of the Norwegian capital's Grand Hotel. She didn't make it to Oslo in time to receive the prize itself in person. It was accepted on her behalf by her daughter.
Now, there's been a couple of changes to the US visa system. Firstly, foreign tourists could be set to have to hand over 5 years of your social media history if you want to come into the United States.
This is to get your ESTA, which if you haven't got a visa, if you haven't got a green card, like most people, you now have to get an ESTA. You have to fill in that form. It's a small fee. It lasts 3 years. It's going to take a bit more, you've got to hand over 5 years of social media history.
5 years is a lot. How do you think you do?
Just to go on holiday? Well, I'm suddenly checking how critical I've been of President Trump.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
I don't think I've maintained my balance, hopefully.
Hopefully it's okay.
So it depends how critical they're going to be, because he doesn't like even the minor criticisms. The other thing about this, so this is actually going through consultation with the various authorities after he signed an executive order. There's another line to this that I was just reading that really jumps out to me. As well as the social media information, the new document proposes the gathering of an applicant's telephone numbers and email addresses used over the last 5 and 10 years, respectively.
10 years of...
But that's your private conversations with everyone. So, I mean, it really is handing over a lot just to go and be a tourist. This is, again, just to pop over for a week's holiday.
Yeah.
Not necessarily... it's slightly different if you're applying to get resident status or citizenship, then maybe that's more legitimate. But I guess they're allowed to.
He's also launched this new kind of gold card visa programme. So this is all about trying to kind of attract wealthy foreign individuals to the United States. And it effectively offers a pathway to legal US residency if you make $1 million payment to the government.
Yeah, so he's alluding now to both a gold card approach, $1 million, possibly a platinum version for $5 million coming. I mean, these are not that dissimilar from things like the non-dom status that we used to have. It's a sort of slightly special status and faster track programs for those that really enhance the economy. They're sort of quite popular, these ideas. I mean, all the details, again, are sort of being considered now. These are kind of coming out often with his quick, loud announcements, either in the Oval Office or on Truth Social. But they're sort of different versions of, trying to get the most attractive workers, I guess, over.
So if you've got $1 million sloshing around, you're fine. If you've made a couple of dodgy social media posts 5 years ago...
Book a different holiday.
Maybe not.
If you've got $5 million sloshing around, you're platinum fine.
Yeah, very fine. Now, we talk an awful lot about small boats on this programme and, in the UK as well, but the number of people arriving in this country illegally over the Channel is actually dwarfed by people overstaying their visas, so effectively coming to the UK and then not leaving when they're supposed to. The Home Office doesn't keep data on the figures, but it's estimated to be hundreds of thousands of people.
Well, our communities correspondent Lisa Holland has spoken to some of those who have overstayed.
This is Kingsbury in northwest London. Locals say the area has been transformed over the past 5 years as post-Brexit visa opportunities opened up for people coming from South Asia.
It looks like as if you are walking through mini Mumbai.
We've arranged to meet someone who lives in the community and helps with events here. He doesn't want to be identified, but raises serious concerns about visa abuse.
They just come with one thing in mind, overstay and work in cash.
And he claims economic migrants are regularly arriving who've paid strangers to pretend they're a friend or relative in order to obtain a visitor visa to get to Britain.
I come across so many people who has come this way into this country.
You think it's widespread, a stranger sponsoring a stranger?
It's a widespread, yeah. When I talk to these people, they literally tell me, oh, someone is coming tomorrow, day after tomorrow, someone coming. I said, what happens if you get caught? They're laughing at us because they know Britain is a soft country.
Multiple community leaders and lawyers have told Sky News of their concerns about the number of people overstaying visas.
At this time, there's definitely in excess of about 200,000 people overstaying in the UK. It might even be closer to 3. It could even be 400,000. The Home Office doesn't have any accurate data because we don't have any exit controls.
What do you think about that?
Well, it's a shambles. It's an institution where every wall in the building is cracked.
So why is your hand shaking?
Many, like Annika, have for years lived in fear of the Home Office, but something has changed. She came to the UK on a 3-month visitor visa from Nigeria when her sister Esther was diagnosed with a brain tumour. Esther says her sister is her full-time carer, which means Annika has now overstayed her visa for 12 years.
When you hear Nigel Farage talking about sending hundreds of thousands, potentially, of people back to their country of birth, what impact does that have on you?
It does make me worry. Everybody is thinking what will become of people like us.
Others disappear within their communities. We're calling this man Ramesh. We meet at a Gurdwara, a Sikh place of worship, where he's come to pray and be fed. Ramesh says he came to the UK just over 2 years ago on a student visa which was cancelled when he stopped going to university after he was involved in a bad accident. He insists he can't return to India because of his political activism.
There are a lot of Pakistani peoples is helped to me to give work in his house for cleaning and for householding things, yeah.
And it's all cash in hand?
Yeah, all is cash in hand.
Which you know is illegal in Britain?
Yeah, I know it's illegal in Britain, but I don't have any another option to manage my financial situation.
In response, a Home Office spokesperson said, "We will not tolerate any abuse of our immigration system, and anyone found to be breaking the rules will be liable to have enforcement action taken against them." In the first year of this government, we have returned 35,000 people with no right to be here. Arrests and raids for illegal working have soared to their highest levels since records began. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
Well, we can talk now to Lisa. Lisa, I think this is such an important story to do because we spend so much time talking about small boats, which is obviously a very visible sign of the illegal migration crisis. But actually that number is dwarfed, we think, by the number of people just overstaying their visas because we don't have the stats on it.
No, I mean, and that's the big worry here. Why don't we have the stats? There's been no data collated by the Home Office for 5.5 years. There are no exit checks, which a lot of people are quite upset about. And in the absence of no data, what we've been doing is piecing together accounts from different communities around the country. We've spoken to people people in the Nigerian community, the Indian community, the Sri Lankan community, in Greater Manchester, in London and elsewhere. And again, alarm bells are sounding. Community leaders saying, you know, I'm frequently asked by people who are a visa overstayer, look, can you help me? What can I do? And you heard the lawyer in that report there saying, you know, he thinks it's in the hundreds of thousands, but we don't know for sure.
Is this... We don't have the data because the Home Office knows it's bad and therefore they're purposefully not collecting. I mean, surely if someone's been given a temporary visa and that visa expires, we know that. There must be some record of that. And we know if someone has or hasn't left the country because, you know, particularly in the age of e-gates, everything's scanned. Well, so presumably if they wanted to do the work, they could work out this number.
Well, there are no exit checks at the moment. And what people are saying is that there is kind of no robust system which has been put in place since things slowed down during the pandemic, through COVID, post-Brexit. So these alarm bells are ringing amongst people in these various communities.
And I guess it has big tax implications as well, right? This is the other part of it. I mean, it was very interesting, I thought, hearing you talk to, you know, some of the people who had overstayed were effectively working illegally, cash in hand. It's a whole... It does feel like it's a big industry.
Well, I mean, I suppose on the one hand, people would point out that they're low-wage workers, but at the same time, yeah, it's navigating the system. It's not having a national insurance number. It's not paying tax. It's all cash in hand, which really heightens concerns amongst a lot of people about the extent of cash in hand work that is going on. I mean, you heard from the guy in the report there talking about how he was a labourer. And yes, of course, you know, that's a cash in hand job for him. But he was also saying at the same time that someone's paying him £5.50 an hour, so kind of less than half of the minimum living wage. So in another sense, he's being exploited.
Can I step back? I mean, obviously we don't have the numbers, so we don't really, it's all sort of slightly guesswork on this point, but is the number of these people whose visa temporary status is expiring because the Home Office has got such a backlog and they're not processing extension claims, or because they have rejected those extension claims and the person should have left? Or is it a mix of both? We don't really know.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both, actually, because lots of people who we've spoken to kind of hear in different circumstances. The one student visa overstayer, he got his visa cancelled because he didn't attend university because he said he had a bad accident, so his visa was cancelled. But then he just went underground, disappearing into his community. And I think that's a really important issue here, that people can absolutely sustain lifestyles within a different diaspora, you know, whether it be a sort of Indian community, a Pakistani community, in the case of the person that we spoke to, and then another senior figure within a different Indian community talking about, it's common conversation.
It's something I've spoken to quite a lot about with politicians over the years, like people like Caroline Flint, for example, in the kind of Doncaster North constituency, saying that actually, you know, kind of the biggest thing is visa overstayers, and people will just get a short-term visa and then they will just go underground, they'll just go. Mm-hmm. It's a deliberate thing.
And that it's yeah, exactly. And one of the concerns raised in our report was that it is a deliberate thing amongst some people, also exploitation, that people will get sponsored to come as a relative, as a visitor visa, that they never actually meet, that they're kind of patched together by, say, an agent in India was the anecdote that we heard, and that someone will say, yes, I'm inviting someone to come over, I'm supporting them, sponsoring them, I'm inviting them, and then actually they never meet and they tear up their documents when they arrive at the airport.
Fascinating. Lisa, clearly a massive story. We don't know quite how massive until we get that data, which doesn't sound like it'll be forthcoming soon. Lisa, thanks so much.
Now, tributes are being paid to the late author of the shopaholic novel, Sophie Kinsella, who has died at the age of 55.
The writer, whose real name was Madeleine Sophie Wickham, died of an aggressive form of brain cancer after being diagnosed in 2022. Her novels have sold more than 45 million copies, wow, in more than 60 countries.
Well, the actor Isla Fisher was one of those who brought one of Kinsella's characters to life in the Confessions of a Shopaholic film. She wrote online, "My heart is broken, you're still my hero, and I'm grateful for you. And although we won't meet again, your light and magic lives on in your incredible characters."
The novelist Jojo Moyes described her as graceful, kind and an encouraging mentor.
She was so uplifting. You always felt uplifted when you left her. And I feel like that's what her books convey. I think they couldn't hide who she was. So the characters might be flawed and messy, but they were also relatable. And you always finished a Sophie Kinsella book feeling better about life. And that's the kind of person she was as well. I feel like a really fitting legacy for her would be that her books will continue to spread joy. And those of us who were lucky to know her will always be grateful to have had her in our lives, because she was a very graceful person. She was a very kind person. She was an encouraging person. I've spoken before about how she was partly responsible for me writing the book that changed my life. She was a mentor. And, you know, if the thing that you are remembered for is joy and grace and kindness, as well as your talent, I mean, what more can any of us ask?
A really sad story, this. I was quite struck by the statement from her publisher as well, saying that she defined an elevated romantic comedy by populating her stories with real-life issues, with wit, emotional depth and societal insight. And I think that is part of why she is such a loved author in some ways, in that kind of like rom-com sort of genre, by the sort of humanity that she wrote with, and we saw that in some of these film adaptations as well. And
the incredible numbers of book sales, 55 million as well. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to a couple of TikTok stars. 4 million hits, I think.
That's good. Good numbers.
And an elderly couple who've attracted that many TikTok followers. Putting us all to shame. They're going to share some of their tips for a healthy life next.
Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, eh?
Let's go. Watch, wait, we're going to get in. Right, get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away. Okay, but listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
That is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist.
My darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off and make a statement.
What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out! What more do you need?
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it. Tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from it, and all of a sudden the shot's rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
The trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation.
Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? They call him the king of the jungle. Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report. Mr. Zuma, Sky News. We're trying to see as much as we can.
Welcome back. Well, winter is here. Of course, for many of us, that means Christmas trees, twinkling lights, but it can also be a dangerous time with flu and other illnesses on the rise.
So, perhaps not surprising that for many people, they're trying to make health their number one priority. And one couple has been sharing their keep fit tips on social media. Let's take a look.
Ashley, look at me.
Amazing.
Respect. I love that.
That's brilliant. That's absolutely brilliant. Jane and Jimmy Shaughnessy join us now. First of all, I think we just need to level with everyone. How many followers do you have now on TikTok?
We've got 4.6 million.
4.6 million. I mean, that's a resounding success.
I can see why. I want to watch more of that. We'll have some more later.
How did you sort of decide to kind of get into this then? What talk me through the journey?
Well, it was just because of COVID during the first lockdown, and we used to go dancing before that. Of course, it all stopped with the lockdown, and I just heard of TikTok, and I said to Jimmy, "Oh, they're dancing on there. We could maybe do that." So we learned to dance. We did it in the garden, and people started following us and commenting on it, and so we just carried on.
I thought we were going to do one dance and that was it. You know, I didn't know it was going to turn into what it was, and we've done well over 1,000 of these dances now in the 5 years since.
But for 4.6 million people, I mean, it is incredible, and obviously many people are drawn to it, highlighted by the numbers. But you're also, as we were kind of saying, you want to try and encourage other people to do it, and it keeps you fit and keeps you healthy.
Well, it's one of the prime reasons, we do what we're doing is, we're able to try and get over the message, about being positive about your own health, and it keeps us active and it enables us to do the things we want to do and the responsibilities we have as grandparents and the like. So the campaign that Pfizer have been doing, this last month has demonstrated that it is important that, in our age and the people over 65 are able to keep themselves active and protect themselves for the things that we try to do.
It's totally right. And look, I'm someone who is a bit of a kind of exercise phobe, I'll be honest, but actually the fact...
Are you?
Yeah, I'm not great.
Really?
But I think this is a good example of something where, you can kind of find something that you enjoy.
Yeah,
right? Because it's not just about, doing...
Oh, God, though, don't make me dance. The worst.
Are you?
I'm going to stick to jogging and the cycle bike.
I reckon if you did that on TikTok, you might get 4.6 million views.
I also might be shamed into unbelievable embarrassment. Dancing, honestly, oh, my God, I'm like the most rhythmless, tall tree that everyone can see. Unless you've got some tips that can change that. I think, by the way, this is a tall order. I don't think you'll be able to change it.
Well, anybody can learn to dance, but you just have to practice. We practice quite a lot, don't we?
Yeah,
and that in itself is good exercise.
Yeah.
Keeping practicing.
Have you found your health improving since taking it up?
Well, yeah, I think it's certainly helped to stop it declining. Being active, and you play golf as well, don't you?
Yeah, I think it's important that we protect ourselves, and part of that is making sure that we have our vaccinations when we needed them, our flu jabs and everything. I think if we didn't do that, then it wouldn't be beneficial to us. And I think taking care of your body and listening to your body and understanding what it is that you need to do to sort of stay active.
Joan, just because of the sort of gist of what you both are saying, and no worries if you don't want to go there with this, but there's been a bit of a debate of late about the generational challenges. I mean, you're talking about it from a health perspective, trying to be as prudent as possible to reduce the pressure on the NHS. Do you feel a bit of that at the moment, though, that the young are having certain things that are tougher than they might have been decades past, or is it a bit unfair to frame things in that way?
I think, times definitely have changed, certainly from when we were young and even from when our children were young. So, yeah, I think it is more difficult for the younger generation now. But, I mean, for us, You know, we want to help the younger generation, and that's why we do, you know, we look after our grandchildren, and that's another reason to stay healthy and try to avoid catching respiratory infections, because, you know, that would stop us doing the things that we want to do and the things that we need to do.
How many grandkids have you got then?
We've got 3.
Yeah.
3 boys.
But the
yeah.
2 youngest is that we end up having to sort of look after them on a Monday and Tuesdays. And
yeah, that's good exercise.
It's hard work.
It's hard work.
Are they into a bit of dancing as well?
Oh yes, yeah. They love watching. They love watching our TikToks.
Yeah.
Oh,
I bet
so
they do.
sweet.
I was going to say
In fact,
the generational point as well. I have no doubt way more young followers than I do as well. With your following on TikTok, it's really impressive.
Well, they've stopped being embarrassed. Our 2 sons, you know, who initially when we're doing this on TikTok, and now all their friends talk about us all the time, apparently, don't
yeah, they're very encouraging. They're happy for us.
Brilliant. I love that. I absolutely love it. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to start following you on TikTok, I think. Might get a few tips. I love it.
Yeah, fantastic. Joan, Jimmy, congrats, and thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Now, make sure to check out our Cheat Sheet podcast. This is what we drop every morning at 6 a.m. It's 5 stories in 10 minutes where we do the work so that you don't have to. Peerages announced yesterday. This is, of course, when the elected politicians, elevate unelected politicians to the House of Lords. And some high-profile names. The Olympic swimming silver medalist Sharon Davis has been elevated. We've also seen the boss of a supermarket giant Iceland, Richard Walker. But then quite a long list of politicos, I would say, you know, whether they've been advisors or former MPs, and they make up, once again, the bulk of this list, Sophie.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it kind of drives me slightly mad that how it's so politicised, these lists. It is quite depressing in some ways. And this isn't a reflection on the individuals. I'm sure they're very worthy, etc., but there is clearly a political, you know, background to nearly all of them.
Well, that was an extract of Cheat Sheet earlier. Talking about the other sort of political story of the day, which is some of the peerages that have been announced. As we were reflecting on there, there's some fantastic high-profile names and all high-profile names. Quite a few of the sort of political insiders, advisors type, which brings that question up again of, is it just sort of patronage?
Yeah, I think this is it. You know, you kind of Matthew Doyle, someone who's been around Westminster for so many kind of years in these kind of communications roles. We had John Redwood, for example, the ex-Conservative cabinet minister. So there are, you know, politicians are always, again, stuffing the House of Lords until they have the opportunity to stuff the House of Lords themselves, is my general take on this.
And the proof is in the pudding, as you exactly say, not least because this government campaigned on Lords reform. They announced it, and they've done a tiny bit of it, which is about to be completed, which is getting rid of the hereditary peers, which obviously a lot of people understandably support. But it hasn't gone much further than that. So the process otherwise is still as it was. And by the way, the government's got 209, Conservatives 282. So that's the excuse for Labour continuing to stuff it to try and re-equalise those numbers. One
of the perhaps most icon-catching appointments from Kemi Badenoch, the Conservative leader, is Sharon Davis, who is, many of us know, as being an Olympic swimmer. She won a silver medal. She's also been one of the people really campaigning on only biological women being able to compete in women's sport. So she's been pretty strident in that debate about whether or not trans women, so people who are still biologically male, should be able to compete in women's sport.
This is obviously focusing on the peerages. We'll get, between Christmas and New Year, the King's New Year's lists, so we'll get more of the knighthoods and damehoods. I just think all of it should be done by an independent panel.
Yeah, me and you. We can work it out.
Well, me and you should get one, or should...
We'll work out the panel.
We're against the patronage unless suddenly...
Unless we're doing it, exactly.
Dame Sophy Ridge.
I'm not sure.
Very good.
Not sure about that one, I have to say. Anyway, do listen to today's Cheat Sheet podcast in full. That should be in your feeds now, as it is every weekday. Coming up, we are going to be talking, of course, about the resident doctor strikes. Is it still going to be going on? It's scheduled for the 17th of December. Rob Powell, our political correspondent, here just to give us a very sort of quick update on it.
Yeah, interestingly, Alison McGovern there, sort of backing up where streeting was, kind of separate from the issue, but I thought it was interesting when you asked about, you know, should we prioritise UK doctors? And she said, yes, absolutely, we should do. The danger of that, I guess, is it's costly. And it takes a long time as well. So whilst medical training places are being expanded now, you're only going to see the benefit of that in, 5 to 10 years' time, minimum, which is why I guess they're relying on international recruitment.
Unless it means that the strike's called off over Christmas, because then I guess you could see one benefit happening a bit quicker than that. Rob, thanks very much. We'll have more on that story in just a few moments' time.
Lots more still to come on Mornings. We're also going to be talking about the most charitable city in the UK. The latest data is out, and we'll be talking to the head of GoFundMe, the website through which many people donate money. That and very much more still to come.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Good morning, it's 8 o'clock. Welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophy and Wilf, good morning from the both of us. Lots to get to today.
Is Wes Streeting's deal for the doctors good enough to end the Christmas strikes? Union members have their say in a vote.
The US seizes an oil tanker near Venezuela. The president accuses Donald Trump of piracy, and things could still escalate.
Seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, a large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later.
Meanwhile, Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Mercado emerges from hiding in Oslo after secretly travelling there to get her Nobel Peace Prize.
Plus, we'll hear how hundreds of thousands of migrants could be illegally overstaying their visas because they think the UK is a soft touch.
And harmony over spending habits. Olympian Tom Daley and his husband tell us how to avoid money miscommunication with your partner this Christmas.
Hello, welcome to Mornings with Bridge and Frost. There is new hope this morning that the resident doctors' strike due to happen just before Christmas could be called off. The trade union representing the doctors says it will consult members on a new offer from the government that improves jobs and training opportunities but doesn't move on pay.
But the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is still pretty furious. He says the British Medical Association should delay the strike until January. Instead, the verdict from members will only come back 2 days before the strikes are due to start on the 17th of December. Rob is here to tell us about some of the moving parts of this. And Rob, so much of the debate publicly that's played out in recent weeks, but also years, has been on pay. The big moving piece of this is on a different area.
And I think this is, the kind of gamble that Wes Streeting is taking here, that whilst the focus has been on pay from the BMA leadership, the union leadership, actually, is that what resident doctors, is that the thing that they are most focused on? Or is there other stuff? Is it about career progression and about some of these bottlenecks that lie in the system where resident doctors that have spent years and years and years training up then can't get into the speciality they want to get into because of intense competition for places? And almost what lies at the heart of it is this sort of irony within the medical training system that we're constantly told that we haven't got enough doctors, GPs, consultants, specialists, and yet competition to train up to those roles is incredibly high. So I think this is an attempt in part to try and fix that by passing emergency legislation in the new year to prioritise UK doctors rather than bringing in doctors that are trained abroad, which is obviously quicker and cheaper. There's also an offer as well on paying for things like exam fees, expenses for doctors too. And so the hope is that by, I think, trying to appeal directly to BMA members and doctors, they might decide that actually this is enough.
So I guess what lots of people today are going to be worried about is this strike still going to go ahead, right? Just before Christmas, slap bang in the middle of flu season. What's your assessment?
It's difficult because whilst it's very significant that they're putting it to members, and in a way I wonder whether this might be the sort of BMA blinking a little bit, given how much they have made this about pay, that they've got an offer not about pay and they're prepared to put it to members. The difficulty is that the ballot comes back on Monday from BMA members when they decide whether they want to carry on with the strike next week or not. Strike starts on Wednesday, 2 days later. And the problem is that work to basically put mitigations in place for these strikes takes place ahead of that. It doesn't just all get organised the day before. Operations get cancelled, treatments get postponed way before that. So if they decide on Monday that they don't want to strike, that they're happy with this, some of the damage is already done. Now, Wes Streeting, I think in a pretty clever negotiating tactic, has said, OK, because of this, call the strike off now, I'll extend your mandate, and if you reject the offer next week, you can strike in January instead, but at least let's get these pre-Christmas strikes off the table. So far, the BMA seem to have rejected that, and I think that is why you are getting this, again, quite angry tone from the Health Secretary saying that he thinks it's one of the most shameful episodes in the long history of the BMA. So he's trying to basically talk directly to resident doctors rather than the BMA leadership, hoping that they'll have more sympathy than the leadership does. But then I think he's also trying to talk to voters, patients, people that use the NHS, and saying, look, this is reasonable in my book. They're the people that are being unreasonable.
Yeah, you spoke to the BMA recently, didn't you, Will?
Yeah, with the BMA on a couple of weeks ago. I mean, look, I think that the interesting thing again there to me is a lot of it did focus on pay. Not on these issues around whether the opportunities are equal. I mean, on those numbers, though, Rob, of how many doctors have come from abroad, a lot of it spiked in that rush post-Brexit coming in, and we've talked a lot about the sort of Boris wave of legal migration. This was a big part of it.
Yeah, there was a lot of people that came in under the health and social care visa, not necessarily resident doctors, but people working on sort of lower salaried jobs, especially in the care sector as well. That's obviously being looked at through some of the reforms that the Home Secretary's brought in that will extend the amount of time that they have to be in the country until they get permanent settled status. But it's a difficult balancing act. You're also in a situation where you get a lot of medical graduates leaving the country, so training in the UK and then moving abroad because of issues about pay and conditions as well. So you have this weird situation where you get a lot of people being trained in the UK, a lot of money going into training them because it's expensive to train up doctors, and then going abroad. And to fill those gaps to an extent, we're bringing people in from overseas. So it sort of feels like there's these big ironies that lie in the centre of the problems with medical recruitment and workforce. It's not going to be fixed overnight, but this seems like an attempt to try and fix it.
It's interesting as well because the change, the spike happened as well because the Conservatives post-Brexit changed the rules, right? So basically young foreign doctors could apply for these training positions in the same way as Brits as well.
And this is something that this change might readdress. We're going to talk about it more later in the programme with Fraser Nelson as well. For now, Rob, thanks so much. Now, Donald Trump has taken a dramatic step in his fight with Venezuela, seizing an oil tanker off the coast of the South American country. In turn, their president has accused Mr. Trump of piracy.
Well, the US says this tanker was taken because it was involved in the shipping of unsanctioned oil, I'm guessing, rather than sanctioned oil. They also posted this video of the operation online, as David Blevins reports.
High stakes on the high seas. This was the moment US forces swooped on an oil tanker off Venezuela. Streaming out across the deck, a bold operation in broad daylight. Armed officers intercepting a vessel suspected of smuggling fuel in defiance of sanctions.
It was seized for a very good reason.
The president following developments from the White House.
We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later.
And as for the oil on board?
I assume we're going to keep the oil.
In the last 4 months, the US has bombed more than 20 boats, killing nearly 90 people, framing it as an operation against drug traffickers. But observers think the build-up in the region, warships, a nuclear submarine and F-35 jets could point to regime change. And the Venezuelan president remains defiant.
We are willing to fight to our last breath. We will remain loyal to the oath we have made to Commander Chavez and the people of Venezuela. It is not a time to vacillate. It is not a time to cower. It's a time for bravery. It's a time for combat. It's a time to build our Venezuelan homeland.
In a post online, US Attorney General Pam Bondi said they had executed a seizure warrant for a crude oil tanker used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran, and claimed it had been involved in an illicit oil shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organisations. Venezuela's foreign minister posted a statement on Instagram calling it a blatant theft and act of international piracy. It's a dramatic escalation in US tactics. Trump determined to shut off Venezuela's main source of revenue, and will fuel speculation that airstrikes could follow. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
Well, after 11 months in hiding, this year's Nobel Peace Prize winner, Maria Corina Machado, arrived safely in Norway. She, I should say, is the opposition leader there in Venezuela.
There she is emerging from her hotel balcony in Oslo, waving to an emotional crowd of supporters. The opposition leader from Venezuela missed the award ceremony itself, having made a secretive escape from her homeland. Here is some of Ali Bunkel's report.
Maria Corina Machado is the Venezuelan opposition leader who's been living in hiding for the past 18 months after the country's president, Nicolas Maduro, refused to concede elections in 2024. She didn't make it to Oslo in time to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in person. Instead, her daughter, Anna, who she hasn't seen for almost 2 years, collected the award and delivered the speech her mother wrote.
She wants to live in a free Venezuela,
and she will never give up on that purpose. That is why we all know, and I know, that she will be back in Venezuela very soon.
In the audience were other South American leaders here in solidarity, and Edmundo Gonzalez, the little-known diplomat who ran and won the presidency when Machado was banned, but is now living in exile.
This prize carries profound meaning. It reminds the world that democracy is essential to peace.
Machado spoke about the pain of families split up and her dream of seeing the millions of Venezuelans who fled one day return. Some of those had travelled to Oslo.
She really deserved this prize, and we are quite happy and proud about it, and I think it's a prize for democracy.
Her journey out of Venezuela was dangerous. The details have been kept a secret. But she spoke to the Nobel Institute on the phone just before taking off.
As soon as I arrive, I will be able to embrace all my family and my children that I have not seen for 2 years, and so many Venezuelans, Norwegians that I know that share our struggle and our fight.
Machado's family, including her mother, are here in Oslo. She'll be finally reunited with them.
When you are faced with so much injustice, sometimes, you're naive and you think that the world is going to recognize what's going through. And you don't understand that you're facing a huge apparatus that's making propaganda to whitewash crimes.
Machado isn't the first Nobel laureate unable to attend, but her journey, which likely involved covert US help, is unprecedented.
In a way, the absence of Maria Corina Machado at the ceremony at the City Hall in Oslo just underlines the risks that she is taking in Venezuela, but equally, her determination to get here also reflects her determination to win that struggle for democracy in Venezuela.
Machado's presence in Oslo will be an embarrassment to President Nicolas Maduro at a time when Venezuela's leader finds himself caught between growing hostility at home and increasing antagonism abroad. US attacks on drug boats and a massive military presence in the region is raising the prospect of war. Maduro tried to prevent Maria Corina Machado from leaving Venezuela, but now that she has, he won't want her to return.
Well, our Europe correspondent Ali Bankel joins us now from Oslo. Ali, there's been so much speculation about whether we were going to see her, and then how do you think it went down when she did make that appearance?
Well, it was very late at night, very much the early hours of this morning, so there were some of her supporters there to see her. We knew that eventually she had escaped from Venezuela successfully. I think when we were talking this time yesterday morning, Sophie, it was very unclear whether or not she would be able to get to Oslo at all. It was a very dangerous journey. I think it probably had some help from the United States to get her out, and out she is, and she is now in Oslo. So there's great expectation about her arrival, but she will be around today. She's meeting Norwegian Parliament. She's holding a couple of press conferences and other engagements as well. So I think, now in daylight hours, she's had a chance to meet her family that she hasn't seen for 2 years. And it will be also a chance to sort of speak publicly, having missed the Nobel ceremony yesterday, but speak publicly about, her pride in winning it, but also what she feels that it means to her fellow countrymen and women.
Ali, to what extent does she support the US administration in terms of some of the tactics they're employing? I guess the tactics aren't supposedly specifically for regime change, but there's a bit of that going on. Does she back Donald Trump, and does that hurt her a little bit if she does?
Well, I mean, it is a strange dynamic on a number of levels. I mean, firstly, what's happening right here in Oslo, the Nobel Peace Prize, something that Donald Trump has made absolutely no secret that he is desperate to win himself, but it went to her. She has congratulated, she thanked Donald Trump in the past. She certainly sort of appeared to be grateful for US support, and she knows she would probably need some level of US support to help overthrow Maduro. But she's a delicate line, not openly endorsing any potential US military action, for example. And so I think she's sort of tried to be careful to keep, as we've seen so many leaders attempting to do, keep the US president on side, but at the same time, you know, have her own independent path in what she is trying to achieve in Venezuela.
Ali, thank you very much indeed. Ali Bunkle there from a very festive-looking Oslo, I should say.
Yeah, very, very nice looking indeed. Ali looked very nice too, as always.
Now, a family is made homeless or threatened with homelessness every 5 minutes in England.
And as winter and Christmas approach, thousands are stuck in temporary accommodation or sleeping rough. Well, today, the government's released its new homelessness strategy, and Molly's here to talk to us a little bit about it. Molly, and what's at the heart of what the government's trying to get across here?
Well, there's kind of three main elements, and all of them are quite target-driven, to be honest. The first is about rough sleepers, so they want to halve the number of people sleeping rough by 2030. The second is slightly broader. It's more about prevention, and this includes things like when people leave prison. We hear so often, don't we, that people are left homeless, and it's this kind of cycle of recall and going back in and out. Stop people like that from not having a home, essentially, to stop that sort of cycle. And the other big one, we hear about it so often, but it's temporary accommodation. And you mentioned some of it there, but when you look at the scale of the numbers of people that are affected by homelessness, around 382,000 people in England, Shelter estimates, and 350,000 of those people are in temporary accommodation, sometimes for kind of weeks on end, going from one place to the next. And that's something the government really want to try and change. The critics, though, pointing out there's no real measures as to how they're going to do that, given the scale of the kind of housing crisis at the moment. But it's something that Alison McGovern, the housing minister, was talking about this morning. I've known what it's like to be in temporary accommodation. It's no childhood. So we have to do something about it. I don't think anybody, as I said, will be doing their Christmas shopping at the moment, seeing, in some cases, people in tents, rough sleeping, and think that this is a sign of a country that's succeeding. So what we've seen in the data is that long-term rough sleeping is more and more of a problem now than it was in the past. And that's why we've got new money that we're announcing as part of this strategy to help people who've been on the streets for months and, in some cases, years.
Molly, Alison McGovern very clear when we spoke to her earlier that, look, it's going to take a while for Labour to turn these things around. But it's got worse in the last year, hasn't it? You know, this is the thing. If you look at kind of temporary accommodation and also rough sleeping.
Yeah, and part of the problem, which the critics point out, is that the key word in that clip was new money. It's not new money. 3.4 billion of the 3.5 billion is not new. It was announced in the spending review last year, and the critics are saying, charities are saying only 100 million of it's new. So if it's going up by 8%, they're sort of saying, you know, how are you going to tackle it? How, if it's made worse with such a small amount of money in the grand scheme of things? And actually what I'm quite struck by is how many critics there are in the Labour Party itself. You've got the Labour mayor in Andy Burnham in Greater Manchester saying that they're not radical enough, saying as well that the continual freezing of housing benefit again in the budget is a massive problem for him, lots of others pointing out the same. And you've got Paula Barker of the parliamentary group, a Labour politician, saying that the proposals are a depressing lack of meat on the bone. So no new money, and quite a lot of critics within their own party. It doesn't feel that actually the proposals are going that far for the people that want to see change.
Molly, great stuff. Thanks so much. Now, major discovery in gut science. Researchers have identified the key microbes that define a healthy gut, including 22 species never seen before.
So they use the world's largest microbiome data set. It could potentially transform how we spot early risks for metabolic and heart disease. Well, joining us now is the epidemiologist, I can't even say that word, the kind of health guru, I'm going to introduce him as, Tim Spector. It's great to have you with us. First, just on this research, you know, what a big deal do you think this could be?
This paper that came out last night in Nature is the biggest study ever, and I think it redefines what we think about gut health. Because in the past, it's been a bit of a vague concept, very hard to know, you know, how you compare people, because we're all unique. Yeah. So how do you get some measure that you can look at different people and work out what's going on? So what we've done is replaced really the old system, which was about diversity, with this new model where we are looking at good bugs versus bad bugs. And so we're rating everybody, saying, what's the ratio of your good guys to your bad guys? And this is a really new way of looking at it. So we want to encourage people to eat in order to improve the good guys, and they squeeze out the bad ones. And most of these good ones we've never discovered. They're totally new. We didn't know they existed before this.
So what are your kind of like top 3 foods to eat to improve your gut then?
Well, I like to think of it really as there's sort of 3 general rules to eat. One is to eat 30 plants a week. It's that diversity that you need to give all those good bugs a chance to give their favourite food, right? The second is to eat the rainbow so that you're getting the defence chemicals in food, and that's what also feeds your good microbes. So things that are brightly coloured or things that are very bitter, that's another rule. And then the third one is probably to eat 3 fermented foods a day, and that is also good for your gut microbes and really good for your immune system.
What is a fermented food? What is that?
A fermented food is any food that's been transformed by microbes into something better. So you think of milk, bit boring, you add microbes to it, you can get cheese, yoghurt, kefir. You have grapes, you ferment it, you have an amazing vintage wine.
So this good for you wine?
Red wine actually is good for your gut microbes. Yes. Not all wine and certainly not all alcohol, but because of the microbial process, it can actually increase the number of healthy chemicals. And that's why everybody, I'm not saying you should drink 3 portions of wine a day, but you should be having 3 different ferments a day to really improve your gut health and your system.
I guess it all depends what you define as a portion as well.
How big a glass?
When it comes to that. Just although that's the headline very much for me at the moment, the red wine's good for you. Going back to the earlier point, 30. I think you said 30 plants a week. Or was it a day? Sorry.
No, a week.
A week. How many does the average person have as it stands? I mean, I guess
probably about 10 to 12 in the UK. People stick to the same ones. You get into a rut when you go shopping. You know, you say have the same salad, and you might think it's healthy because you're having the same one. But actually, we now know that for optimal gut health, you need to get that really rich diversity, and that's. You know, and it's not always easy to count your plants because we don't. It's every herb, it's every spice, it's different coloured vegetables, it's nuts, it's seeds, and so that's why with the company Zoe, we've got an app that helps you count them.
Yeah.
So just by using AI, you can count them. So I think in the future we're going to be using these sort of tools to help us. So rather than the 5 a day, which is dead easy but actually not very good for your health, getting people to eat more diverse plants on a regular basis, I think, is how the best way to improve gut health.
I'm kind of thinking on behalf of parents everywhere who can only get their kids to eat broccoli or cucumber, and so they just do that every day. And I guess my question as well is, it feels like we've got a country where some people are super health conscious, eating loads of great diversity of food. Our producer Thomas, he's 100%.
He's applauding everything you say to say he already does it.
He's talking about seed mixes in our ear. And then if you also have parents, time poor, cash strapped, stressed about all these headlines on processed food, but not knowing what their kids are going to eat, are there any super easy things that you would say, actually, you know what, introduce these into your kids' diet and it could make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think changing their breakfast, for example, is one thing. Moving away from sugary cereals, which are like having dessert for breakfast, to something that's like a fermented food or yogurts, and that's a good time to introduce mixed berries. You can get frozen berries, just put them on that breakfast. The mixed seeds that your producer loves. I always keep a jar of mixed seeds, or you can, get products like our Daley 30, which has 30 different freeze-dried plants from Zoe. You've got all kinds of mixes, and it's about adding things to your plate. So looking to say, well, whatever they're eating, can I add something to it? Can I add a little ferment? Can I add some more nuts to it? Can I add some more seeds to it? Just if you start thinking in this way, it's a very different way of thinking about your food. It's not about calories and fats and everything. It's what can I eat that's going to be really good for my microbes. So you're like a gardener or a zookeeper, and you're trying to encourage all those different ones. And if you get kids to think that way, that also might be a good way to encourage them to start being more diverse and taking a risk and saying, this little microbe might just like that one, because they're very fussy.
It's hard.
We discovered a microbe that only drinks coffee.
So microbes are like children, basically.
They are, and so they need lots of choice, and eventually they'll pick at something, and then if you give them enough, then they'll start to.
Can I just ask perhaps a really stupid question? Maybe I should start this, but this is all to improve your gut health. What does that then lead to? Is it helps you lose weight, or it stops you getting certain diseases? What's the
all of the above? We now know that your gut health is crucial for your overall health. It's like we've discovered a new organ in your body, like your liver or your heart. Essentially, it does three things. Your gut microbiome is crucial for your immune system. So most of your immune cells are in your gut, so that microbes are talking to the immune system all the time. That means that if your immune system's working well, you're fighting infections, you're fighting cancer, you're fighting ageing, and you're reducing allergies and autoimmune disease. It's also good for your metabolism, so you're less likely to put on weight. And actually, most people who improve their gut do lose weight, and you have less hunger pangs. And it also is good for your brain, so your mental health, and it produces brain chemicals, etc. So it really does everything. It's the one-stop shop that if you had to, do one other big change for your health, it's to look after your gut microbes.
It's been absolutely fascinating.
Sold it well.
Yeah, I just think, and also there's a kind of joy in it. We often talk about diets as like, restricting food, and this is actually about eating more different things.
It's not just the red wine, though.
Oh, I took back red wine and cheese, I'm not going to lie, but I'm sure, and the seed mix, seed mix as well.
Remember our favourite ferments, you've got cheese, yoghurt,
rainbow, 30 plants.
Great.
Plus red wine.
A little bit of ferment.
Can't go wrong.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
After the break, we're going to be talking to a very high-profile couple about getting in money arguments and how to avoid that. That's next.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News presenter?
We've done the work and the reading, so you don't have to. Being a Sky News presenter.
Hello and welcome. Westminster, the heart of British politics.
I'm so sorry about what happened to you. So what on earth is going on?
It's not true.
Can I tell you what I think? It's really unusual. Mornings with Rich and Frost. Let's crack on. Let's get started.
What's the best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
Who's funnier?
Being a Sky News journalist.
A special edition of The World with me, Yalda Hakim.
Pakistan has the right to respond.
You're like, what?
A historic day here today. Congratulations, this is a huge moment. But what happens now?
Welcome back. Reminder of the top stories. The British Medical Association will consult members on a new offer from the government, which could avert a walkout by resident doctors in the run-up to Christmas. Medics in England are due to go on strike for 5 days from next Wednesday in their row over pay and concerns over training places.
Venezuela has accused the US of piracy after an oil tanker was seized off the country's coast. Donald Trump announced the operation during a meeting of business leaders at the White House. It's been described as a major escalation in their campaign against drug smugglers.
Venezuela's opposition leader, meanwhile, has made her first public appearance in months after covertly travelling to Oslo to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Maria Corina Machado stood from a balcony of the Norwegian capital's Grand Hotel. She didn't make it to Oslo in time to receive the prize itself. That was accepted on behalf of her by her daughter.
Right, the Olympic gold medalist Tom Daley and his husband, the film director Dustin, are celebrating 12 years together. And they say that harmony over your partner's spending habits is the key to a successful relationship.
It's something they hope to help others crack with their new online tool where couples can discover their money language. They both join us now. Tom and Dustin, very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, or good evening for us here. It's 12:30 at night in LA.
Yeah, well, thank you in particular for staying up. By the way, very festive-looking home you've got there, which is great to see. Dustin, tell us exactly what this isn't just tips and advice. There's an online tool, and you kind of describe your thoughts and the way you approach money, and it gives you a title of the type of money language you fall under.
It does. And it's really fun to read through them and a little bit terrifying because you kind of go, oh gosh, I'm a little bit of that, a little bit of this. And then you get to the one that's your language. And for me, for a lot of reasons, I think we're very different. And mine is a scarcity language. So I earn, but I just refuse to spend because I think any day now, it's all over, getting cleaned out.
And I was the complete opposite. My whole thing was lifestyle enrichment. And it's actually been really quite interesting because before we've never really spoken about money in that way. We've always kind of kept things very separate and kind of done our own thing. But on the Starling Bank website, you can go through all of these questions and you can work out as a couple what your money language is to be able to actually then talk about it and be able to figure out, plan. We then now actually have decided that we're going to do more like quarterly finance things. So we just sit down and chat about it because it's very British to not talk about money. So trying to, open up about that a little bit more.
And it's very American to talk too much about everything. So I'm always gabbing, and I finally sort of cracked his shell on what his spending is like. All I have to say, thank God there's not two of each of us. Like 2 of me, big problem, 2 of him, forget about it.
You've obviously got different money language. In other words, I think one of you likes to spend loads of money and the other one doesn't. Is this something that you used to kind of row about before then?
There's nothing that we ever really used to fight about but basically I tend to be the person that is looking after making sure that everything is where it needs to be. I'm the one who does like the food shop. I'm the one who does all of like the budgeting. I'm the one who does all of like
he also does the scrolling on social media, and anything that even gets a little glimmer out of his eye, it's purchased within seconds. I watch it with wonder. It's not a fight so much as like, how do you do it? I just couldn't do that.
I am target market for lots of those ads that are targeted towards me, I feel, on social media. Yeah.
Do you think that this is something that causes rifts in marriages, in couples? Dustin, is this trying to address that?
Well, I do think that open communication about how you spend, because so much of that becomes hardwired, whether it's in your DNA or in your experience, how you grew up, who you were around when you learned to spend. And I don't think we always think about how different we might be wired and in what ways that's compatible, in what ways that's going to cause friction. And, I think whenever, even some of the combinations where you go, oh boy, that's going to be a tough one, at least you know what each other's language is. And so you can identify when the other person might be overspending.
But it's also how you grow.
Kinds of things.
It's also how you grow up. Like for me, like starting from the age of like 7 in sport, I always knew that I had to invest not just money but also time in my sport in order to be able to get to the top of where I needed to be. Whereas Lance grew up in a way that was, it was difficult you should probably speak on it more than I should because you actually lived it. But, you had to work really hard and you weren't always sure how your life would be week by week.
Yeah, I'm not alone. Listen, there's a lot of people who grow up in difficult circumstances and you work really hard to get out of that. But that sense that, tomorrow isn't as certain as you'd like it to be sticks with you. And like that's the really sweet side of this is, yes, we're very different. But Tom has taught me how to use money to enjoy life, to create better experiences for our family, which creates more memories, which creates more love. And I would struggle with that if I wasn't with someone who spends very differently, all kidding aside.
And it's also the fact that lifestyle enrichment being my money language, having lost my dad when I was 17, I also have this view on life that you never know if you're going to get tomorrow as well. So I think that kind of reinforces the way that I think about how things, of course, there's obviously being sensible, but it's also, if it's an experience that we could do as a family or have friends over for dinner or be able to host because we're fortunate enough to be able to, little things like that, I feel very lucky to have friends around that we can do that with.
On that point, the fact that you kind of acknowledge that you are fortunate enough to be able to do that, I guess that's my sort of question in a way. Like, me and Wilf obviously in the boat to an extent, but you guys obviously have done well. You are financially okay, and is it much more difficult, I guess, for those couples who aren't in that position? It's easy for us all to sit here and say, yeah, just stop worrying about money. But if you're worried about your partner spending on something which means it's going to impact the school, the family food shop at the end of the week, then it's a bit of a different position.
Yeah, right. It's not even about who's arguing, and it's about, it's like, let's talk money. Like there's so many people avoid talking about it to figure out how to future plan, future proof. Yeah. And I think that's what this tool is about, is being able to understand each other's money language so that what some people might find intimidating or worrisome, to be able to have that conversation with your partner, to be able to figure out a way forward together of how you can make sure that you are able to do what you need to do.
I do think it's the sort of tools I wish my parents had. It's the kind of thing, because we were not fortunate financially, but I think if we had known better, we could have done better. And for moving up in the world, it's really good to understand who you are, what is the starting point, and what do I need to do to get to that place I want to be? What do I need to invest now? What do I need to save now? And for a partnership to be able to speak the same language, to be able to understand each other's language in that, it gives you a shot to dig yourself out, build yourself up.
Tom, I got to ask.
It's the middle of the night and our kid's crying, so I'm going to be right back.
You go. You go.
Yeah,
I love it.
Phoenix has just woken up, so you're going to have me now.
Tom, I need to ask you about Traitors. I'm such a big Traitors fan. How was it?
Oh my gosh, it was the best thing, honestly. It was tough being away from the family, but it was one of those things like I've never experienced before. Like the Olympics is obviously an incredibly immersive experience because you're in the Olympic Village and you're working towards a competition. But the Traitors, you're in this castle and the only thing you can think about and speak about is the competition. And then when you're not being filmed, you are so on your own. Like there is no one you're talking to. You're completely cut off from any kind of communication. So it is very, very intense, but at the same time, it was, as a fan of the show, I loved it so much.
I also just want to ask you, the jumpers that you and Dustin were wearing, obviously you're still wearing, but he's left the shot. Are they things you've knitted yourself?
No, they're not. Every time I wear any kind of knitwear, I always get asked if I've made it. And, I was thinking about wearing something that I've made, but then, it was very, very festive, some of my more recent makes. Because it's coming up to Christmas now, so I get all of my Christmas sweater making going.
Well, we would have embraced the Christmas jumper.
That's all good.
But this is a lovely jumper too.
Time. No, thank you.
It's been great to have you on. We're going to let you go and deal with your kind of family night wakes. We know how that is.
Honestly,
so.
I heard the baby and I sort of thought, is that here?
Yeah, you kind of like have that.
Taken back to,
I know, it's like that parent thing.
Like,
Oh
gosh.
Yeah, we have a 7-year-old and a 2.5-year-old. So the 2.5-year-old is still thinks it's fun to wake up in the night and very early in the morning.
Well, as we said, we've been there. We wish them and you both a very Merry Christmas and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, you too.
That was absolutely lovely, lovely discussion there. Right, still to come, we're going to be talking about, I mean, this is...
Oh, it's amazing, the story. So, basically,
I'm still a bit confused.
when we thought the first people discovered fire in the world, we've got that completely wrong. It's actually way earlier. They've discovered evidence of it here in the UK, and we're going to find out more about it.
Great tease.
Okay, there's a lot of firing going on.
Can you explain to me why? We're journalists, sir.
Let's go. Watch, wait. Right, we're going to get in. Right, get in.
We just want to ask you a few questions about your involvement with ISIS. Next step for them quite often is getting on a boat and sailing illegally over into Europe.
Es un solo procesamiento, una sola sacada.
Whoa. Oh my goodness. Whoa. Oh my goodness. If you weren't affected, you'd be a bit of a strange person.
Turn off the camera, turn around and go away.
Okay, but
Listen, I told you 3 times.
They saw 2 guys, 2 bad people.
There's an absolutely packed dinghy.
That is what it's like. Sometimes you have to put in an awful lot of hard work. It's worth doing. I suppose it is what we do.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist.
Hi, darling.
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
Is being a Sky News journalist. You said to people, I'm not coming back for more, but you have come back for more.
Well, let's kick off.
And make a statement. What can our Prime Minister say to you to not impose tariffs?
He's coming out!
What more do you need?
Liberation Day.
By popular demand,
Wow.
here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK.
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
The trauma for everyone who witnessed what happened here hasn't gone away.
Devastation.
Greg Milam, Sky News, Manchester.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist?
They call him the king of the jungle.
Being a Sky News journalist.
Yusra Al-Baghir has this report.
And this is what's left of it.
As a woman of colour, how did the Harris campaign speak to you?
People risk their lives to speak to us for this report.
Mr. Zuma, Sky News.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
Welcome back. Now, we talk a lot about small boats, but the number of people arriving in the UK illegally over the Channel is actually dwarfed by people overstaying their visas, so coming to the UK and then not leaving when they're supposed to. The Home Office doesn't keep data on the figures, but some estimate it to be hundreds of thousands of people.
Our communities correspondent Lisa Holland's spoken to some of those who have overstayed.
This is Kingsbury in northwest London. Locals say the area has been transformed over the past 5 years as post-Brexit visa opportunities opened up for people coming from South Asia.
It looks like as if you're walking through mini Mumbai.
We've arranged to meet someone who lives in the community and helps with events here. He doesn't want to be identified, but raises serious concerns about visa abuse.
They just come with one thing in mind, overstay and work in cash.
And he claims economic migrants are regularly arriving who've paid strangers to pretend they're a friend or relative in order to obtain a visitor visa to get to Britain.
I come across so many people who has come this way into this country.
You think it's widespread, a stranger sponsoring a stranger?
It's a widespread, yeah. When I talk to these people, they literally tell me, oh, someone is coming tomorrow, day after tomorrow, is someone coming. I said, what happens if you get caught? They're laughing at us because they know Britain is a soft country.
Multiple community leaders and lawyers have told Sky News of their concerns about the number of people overstaying visas.
At this time, there's definitely in excess of about 200,000 people overstaying in the UK. It might even be closer to 3. It could even be 400,000. The Home Office doesn't have any accurate data because we don't have any exit controls.
What do you think about that?
Well, it's a shambles. It's an institution where every wall in the building is cracked.
So why is your hand shaking?
Many, like Annika, have for years lived in fear of the Home Office, but something has changed. She came to the UK on a 3-month visitor visa from Nigeria when her sister Esther was diagnosed with a brain tumour. Esther says her sister is her full-time carer, which means Annika has now overstayed her visa for 12 years.
When you hear Nigel Farage talking about sending hundreds of thousands, potentially, of people back to their country of birth, what impact does that have on you?
It does make me worry. Everybody is thinking, what will become of people like us?
Others disappear within their communities. We're calling this man Ramesh. We meet at a Gurdwara, a Sikh place of worship, where he's come to pray and be fed. Ramesh says he came to the UK just over 2 years ago on a student visa which was cancelled when he stopped going to university after he was involved in a bad accident. He insists he can't return to India because of his political activism.
There are a lot of Pakistani peoples is helped to me to give work in his house for cleaning and for householding things, yeah.
And it's all cash in hand?
Yeah, all is cash in hand.
Which you know is illegal in Britain?
Yeah, I know it's illegal in Britain, but I don't have any another option to manage my financial situation.
In response, a Home Office spokesperson said, "We will not tolerate any abuse of our immigration system, and anyone found to be breaking the rules will be liable to have enforcement action taken against them." In the first year of this government, we have returned 35,000 people with no right to be here. Arrests and raids for illegal working have soared to their highest levels since records began. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
Now, I am genuinely really fascinated by this next story. So researchers led by the British Museum have unearthed the earliest known evidence of humans making fire. So that's obviously a massive turning point in human evolution.
Well, the discovery shows humans were making fire around 350,000 years earlier than previously thought.
So they've got it, it's completely changed everything, basically. And joining us now is Dr. Rob Davis, who is a Paleolithic archaeologist at the British Museum. This is quite exciting, right?
It's incredible, yeah. It's an incredible discovery.
When did we think we originally discovered it?
So until now, the earliest evidence for actually making fire was about 50,000 years ago. This was from a site in France.
But it's now add 350,000 to that.
So it's now, yeah, add 350,000, so we're now at 400,000 years
Whoa,
ago.
that's totally different. That's totally different.
Yeah.
And what is the evidence? What was found then?
So if you imagine a campfire, a small campfire, it's burnt out, you know, the ashes and the charcoal, of course, that's all washed away. And what you're left with is the baked earth underneath it. So we have about a half-metre diameter patch of sort of terracotta-coloured clay where it's been baked in by the heat. This was the location of a campfire not made by our own species, because at 400,000 years ago, Europe was occupied by a different species of human, Neanderthals. So this was a Neanderthal campfire. And then around that campfire, we have their stone tools, so activities around the campfire, and then crucially, fragments of this mineral called iron pyrite. and that could be used by hitting it with flint to create sparks and to light fires.
Wow.
And that's the earliest evidence we have for fire lighting.
So that's wow, that's amazing.
How sure are we about this?
Very sure.
Very
yeah,
sure?
Yeah, pretty sure. We had to do a lot of analysis to, first of all, demonstrate that sediment had definitely been heated. We then had to demonstrate that it wasn't heated in a wildfire. That's always, when particularly at that, such a long time ago, it's harder to interpret this sort of evidence. So we could show that it was in fact heated by humans. And then the pyrite, we had to show that it's incredibly rare. So the only way it could have got to the site was that it was brought there by humans.
It's incredible.
Or Neanderthals.
Or Neanderthals, yes.
So Neanderthals, you describe it as a species of human. Like, for the kind of uninitiated in us, what is a Neanderthal?
Like
me. Like, what... for the Neanderthals with us. What, sorry. No. That's a joke. What was a Neanderthal? What kind of life were they living?
So, at this time, 400,000 years ago, they were very similar to our own ancestors who were evolving in Africa at this time. They were a very evolved human. They had a brain, so we know from their fossils that their brain size was similar to our own. They were very good hunters. We now know making fire. They were making tools out of stone and bone and wood. Very evolved. And then we can start thinking, one of the interesting things about this discovery, we can start thinking about how, once you have a campfire, how that starts to change kind of social structures.
So this might be a really stupid question, but obviously fire, they would have observed fire before that. How do you think they would have gone through the process of working out how to start a fire? So it's probably a really long process. So we have evidence of humans interacting with fire, or early humans, over 1 million years ago in Africa. So it's probably a long process of exploiting natural fire. So if you have wildfire, those burnt landscapes provide different resources. So animals that have been caught, they've been cooked, so you can kind of forage and scavenge those remains. But also you can collect embers and then sort of light your own fires using embers that you've collected from wildfires. But that's only available some of the time when you have a wildfire. And of course, as soon as your fire goes out, if you haven't got the ability to relight it, then you can't benefit from it. I'm going to feel really crap next time. Excuse me, really bad. Correction on that word. Apologies for it, but really bad next time I have to get a lighter out and use a box of matches.
Or you're going to get a little flint out. And,
I just feel, I'm not going to, and I'll feel bad that I don't.
It's hard. I've tried to light a fire with that before in one of those, Stone Age places, and I tell you what, it is not easy.
It's not easy, no.
I didn't do it. I failed miserably. I'm interested about where this was discovered. So it was in the UK, in Suffolk?
Suffolk, yeah.
And given the kind of the globe at the time, was England and the UK quite an advanced place for human species?
So it's found in a village called Barnham in Suffolk. At this time, so Europe is occupied by Neanderthals. We just have an incredible record in this particular part, so in England in general, but particularly in East Anglia. And it's really it's a set of kind of geological circumstances, kind of fortuitous circumstances that means that this evidence has preserved in ways that it hasn't preserved elsewhere. So, I'm sure, that part of England was a very good place to live 400,000 years ago, but it's the reason that we can say so much about these early humans is because the evidence has survived.
And where else would the early humans be in the world at the time?
Africa, the whole of Eurasia, the subcontinent as well. So, across most of the world. Probably not too far north, so once you get up to Britain and Northern Europe, that's probably kind of towards the northern limits. But not yet in the Americas, not yet in Australia.
So could we have, in fact, discovered fire earlier, based on your point that we're lucky this was preserved?
Yeah, so it's unlikely that it was invented in Suffolk. The people who actually...
Why?
It could have been,
Why?
But I suppose because the evidence is so patchy, because so much of it is lost to time, the chances of us finding the first instance is incredibly remote. And actually it makes sense because, Britain would have been quite a hard place for these people to live, so particularly during the winters, so long, cold winters. The climate would have been similar to today. So the winters would have been, long and cold, dark nights. So fire would have been a really important part of the toolkit for surviving. So perhaps the reason that these humans were doing so well in Britain at this time was because they had this technology, which they were able to bring with them from elsewhere.
And how important is fire to human evolution?
I think it's probably one of the most important technological discoveries ever.
Yeah.
It kind of underpins everything. Kind of our whole human civilization is kind of built on our ability to create fire from nothing, essentially, and then control it and use it to manipulate other materials in the world around us. So everything from the agricultural revolution, the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, right up to the Industrial Revolution, obviously space age. It's all fuelled by our ability to control fire.
It's interesting that we use the word technology for that. So that's the right word for this, obviously.
Yeah. Well, once you're starting to use it to build other things, then yeah.
Really so interesting.
Yeah, it's been fascinating. It really has, and also we can tell your kind of enthusiasm for it as well. Like, it comes across, the kind of excitement for this discovery and how it really is, changing everything.
Paleolithic archaeologist.
Correct.
What does that mean exactly?
So Stone Age archaeology.
Studies.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Amazing
Dr.
stuff.
Rob Davis, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Should do a special on that.
I'm there. Let's go to Suffolk.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Absolutely.
Really very interesting, although maybe not testing our skills without matches.
No, it's hard. It's
Frankly,
really
I
hard.
usually get through a whole box of firelighters as well.
It's not easy.
Pretty tricky.
Not easy.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll have much more on the hope around doctor strikes ending. We shall discuss after the short break.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Being a Sky News journalist.
Ed Conway, Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
Good morning, it is 9 o'clock and welcome to Mornings with Ridge and Frost.
With Sophie and Wilf, a very good morning from me as well. Lots to get to.
Is Weststreeting's deal for the doctors good enough to end the Christmas strikes? Union members will be having their say in a vote.
The US seizes an oil tanker near Venezuela. The president accuses Donald Trump of piracy. Things could still escalate.
Seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later.
Meanwhile, the Venezuelan opposition leader, Maria Mercado, emerges from hiding in Oslo after secretly travelling there to get her Nobel Prize.
We'll tell you which city has taken the title of the UK's most generous this year, and with good reason.
Plus, German police step up their street presence ahead of tonight's Maccabi Tel Aviv's Europa League match against Stuttgart.
There's new hope that this morning the resident doctors' strike due to happen just before Christmas could be called off. The trade union representing the doctors says it will consult its members on a new offer from the government which improves jobs and training opportunities but doesn't move on pay.
However, the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, is still pretty furious. He says the British Medical Association should delay the strike until January, but instead the verdict from members will only actually come back 2 days before the strikes are due to start, which is on the 17th of December. Well, we can talk now to Rob Powell. It feels like you've got a bit of progress, but there is still an awful lot of kind of bitter words between Wes Streeting and the union.
Yeah, I think Wes Streeting is betting on two things. One, that members are less concerned about the headline pay dispute than the leadership of the BMA is. And also, I think he's betting that he's able to speak directly to them and that they are swayed by, I guess, the offer that's being made, but also the sort of the mood music, the situation in the NHS at the moment. And they listen, I guess, more to him than they necessarily do the leadership. The offer here is basically not around pay, but it's about expanding the number of specialist training places available. And crucially also, it's about passing emergency legislation next year that prioritises UK doctors for those training places over overseas recruits. So it cuts down the competition for those places, reduces the bottleneck, and basically means people that have spent years and years and years training to be a doctor are able to progress into a field of medicine that they want to go into. I guess the problem is, in terms of the immediate strike action, even if they do say, members do say, yes, this is enough, we'll take this, we'll only know that on Monday, and the strike's due on Wednesday, so a lot of operations may have been cancelled already by then and a lot of damage already done.
Could that be changed at very short notice, or does it take quite a lot of sort of complicated action on behalf of the union?
In terms of calling off the strike at short notice?
In terms of doing their poll quicker, can they move it up or agree to what Wes Streeting's offered?
I mean, in theory, but I guess it's that balance between having enough time so that you can get a decent turnout of doctors and, you know, listening to what the BMA have been saying this morning. They say, look, we've been wanting to talk to Wes Streeting in September, in October, and they feel they haven't had progress from him then. So, you know, as much as this is a sort of clever move from Wes Streeting in a way, you do wonder why it's come so late ahead of this strike action when there have been concerns about competition for these places and bottlenecks for a little while. Look, maybe he was hoping that they wouldn't go for the strike action. Maybe he was hoping something would move and he wouldn't have to play this card. But look, if we'd been doing this 2 weeks ago and having this conversation then there would have been a more opportunity for them to ballot, call off the strike and not cancel operations. We are where we are now. Wes Streeting has said that he'll be prepared to extend the strike mandate and saying, look, if you reject it, why don't you strike in January rather than strike now? But it doesn't appear the BMA are going for that at the moment.
Yeah, and of course, you know, if you are a patient, if you're someone worried about what's happening over Christmas, at the minute, strike's still going ahead, even if it's called off, as Rob was saying, like to still be disruption.
Mm-hmm. Rob, great stuff. Thank you. Now, Donald Trump has taken a dramatic step in his fight with Venezuela, seizing an oil tanker off the coast of the South American country. In turn, their president has accused Mr. Trump of piracy.
Well, the US says that the tanker was taken because it was involved in the shipping of sanctioned oil. They also posted a video of what happened online, as David Blevins reports.
High stakes on the high seas. This was the moment US forces swooped on an oil tanker off Venezuela. Streaming out across the deck, a bold operation in broad daylight. armed officers intercepting a vessel suspected of smuggling fuel in defiance of sanctions.
It was seized for a very good reason.
The president following developments from the White House.
We've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. And other things are happening, so you'll be seeing that later.
And as for the oil on board?
I assume we're going to keep the oil.
In the last 4 months, the US has bombed more than 20 boats, killing nearly 90 people, framing it as an operation against drug traffickers. But observers think the build-up in the region, warships, a nuclear submarine and F-35 jets could point to regime change. And the Venezuelan president remains defiant.
We are willing to fight to our last breath. We will remain loyal to the oath we have made to Commander Chavez and the people of Venezuela. It is not a time to vacillate. It is not a time to cower. It's a time for bravery. It's a time for combat. It's a time to build our Venezuelan homeland.
In a post online, US Attorney General Pam Bondi said they had executed a seizure warrant for a crude oil tanker used to transport sanctioned oil from Venezuela and Iran, and claimed it had been involved in an illicit oil shipping network supporting foreign terrorist organisations. Venezuela's foreign minister posted a statement on Instagram calling it a blatant theft and act of international piracy. It's a dramatic escalation in US tactics. Trump determined to shut off Venezuela's main source of revenue, and will fuel speculation that airstrikes could follow. David Blevins, Sky News in Washington.
Well, they've sealed a big tanker. It contains a lot of oil. And when Donald Trump was asked what was going to happen to that oil, this is what he had to say.
Exactly what happened. It kind of started a little bit, but we'll see if we can put it out.
We're interested in the seizure of this tanker. What happens to the oil on this ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You know, you're a good newsman. Just follow the tanker.
Do you know where it's going?
Follow it. Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Is it true it's going to
But we're
keep
going to, I assume we're going to keep the oil.
There you go.
We shall see. We shall see. Now, on this topic of Venezuela, after 11 months in hiding, this year's Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Maria Corina Machado, did in fact arrive safely in Norway, not quite in time to accept her award, but to at least celebrate with some of her fans immediately afterwards.
We can see her there coming out onto a hotel balcony in Oslo. It was quite late at night, actually, and she was waving to a pretty emotional crowd of supporters. You know, as Wilfred was saying, she did miss the actual award ceremony after the secretive escape that she made from Venezuela.
Well, Maria Machado's daughter accepted the Nobel Peace Prize on her behalf, reading a speech written by her mother. In it, she described the country's illegitimate president as a state terrorist. Ali Bunkel has the details for us.
Maria Corina Machado is the Venezuelan opposition leader who's been living in hiding for the past 18 months after the country's president, Nicolas Maduro, refused to concede elections in 2024. She didn't make it to Oslo in time to receive the Nobel Peace Prize in person. Instead, her daughter, Anna, who she hasn't seen for almost 2 years, collected the award and delivered the speech her mother wrote.
She wants to live in a free Venezuela, and she will never give up on that purpose. That is why we all know, and I know, that she will be back in Venezuela very soon.
In the audience were other South American leaders here in solidarity, and Edmundo Gonzalez, the little-known diplomat who ran and won the presidency when Machado was banned, but is now living in exile.
This prize carries profound meaning. It reminds the world that democracy is essential to peace.
Machado spoke about the pain of families split up and her dream of seeing the millions of Venezuelans who fled one day return. Some of those had travelled to Oslo.
She really deserves this prize, and we are quite happy and proud about it. And I think it's a prize for democracy.
Her journey out of Venezuela was dangerous. The details have been kept a secret. But she spoke to the Nobel Institute on the phone just before taking off.
As soon as I arrive, I will be able to embrace all my family and my children that I have not seen for 2 years, and so many Venezuelans, Norwegians that I know that share our struggle and our fight.
Machado's family, including her mother, are here in Oslo. She'll be finally reunited with them.
When you are faced with so much injustice, sometimes, you're naive and you think that the world is going to recognize what's going through. And you don't understand that you're facing a huge apparatus that's making propaganda to whitewash crimes.
Machado isn't the first Nobel laureate unable to attend, but her journey, which likely involved covert US help, is unprecedented.
In a way, the absence of Maria Corina Machado at the ceremony at the City Hall in Oslo just underlines the risks that she is taking in Venezuela, but equally, her determination to get here also reflects her determination to win that struggle for democracy in Venezuela.
Machado's presence in Oslo will be an embarrassment to President Nicolas Maduro at a time when Venezuela's leader finds himself caught between growing hostility at home and increasing antagonism abroad. US attacks on drug boats and a massive military presence in the region is raising the prospect of war. Maduro tried to prevent Maria Corina Machado from leaving Venezuela, but now that she has, he won't want her to return. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Oslo.
We are expecting a live press conference at some point this morning. It could be in the next 15 to 20 minutes even, and we'll bring you some of that when it begins in Oslo, expected in the next 15 to 20 minutes.
Now back here in the UK, a family is made homeless or threatened with homelessness every 5 minutes in England.
And as winter and Christmas approach, thousands are stuck in temporary accommodation or sleeping rough. Well, today the government's released its new homelessness strategy, and Molly's here to talk to us a bit about it. It comes as some of this new data's come out to sort of remind everyone of the scale of the problem. It's very striking. What is the government's strategy?
Well, firstly, to point out, and you did to the Minister this morning, it's actually a problem that's getting worse. 8%. Homelessness has risen by 8% within the last year since the government have been in power, but they have got this new strategy. There are a few different strands to it. One is about the number of people rough sleeping, about 4,000 out of the total, so a small amount compared to those in temporary accommodation, but they want to halve the number of rough sleepers by 2030. A big part of it is about prevention. They want kind of government bodies, institutions to be talking to each other. That's things like when people leave prison, trying to ensure that they're not homeless, or when you go into hospital, make sure that you have somewhere to live when you come out. And another and a huge part, and something they really need to tackle, is temporary accommodation. They want to see less people sort of lurching from one Airbnb or temporary accommodation to the next, but no clear, really, critics point out, way of achieving that. I mean, the amount of social housing that we're building per year is still particularly low, so they have no real plan at the moment to sort of appease that. But in terms of the scale and the numbers, so shelters say that within England, 380,000 people roughly are homeless at the moment and going into Christmas. But of that, 350,000 people are living in temporary accommodation. So it's a huge problem and something they're looking to solve. And it's something that the Housing Minister, Alison McGovern, was talking about this morning.
I've known what it's like to be in temporary accommodation. It's no childhood. So we have to do something about it. I don't think anybody, as I said, will be doing their Christmas shopping at the moment, seeing, in some cases, people in tents, rough sleeping, and think that this is a sign of a country that's succeeding. So what we've seen in the data is that long-term rough sleeping is more and more of a problem now than it was in the past. And that's why we've got new money that we're announcing as part of this strategy to help people who've been on the streets for months and in some cases years.
Key word there, new money. Actually, charities pointing out that so much of it, 3.4 out of the £3.5 billion was pre-announced in the spending review. Only about 100 million is new money. And actually, I'm quite struck by how many critics there have been to the policy, particularly within the Labour Party. I mean, Andy Burnham's not shying away from making criticism and making sort of hay out of this moment, but it's a big thing for him in Greater Manchester. He's made it a big part of his kind of ticket. But you've also got people like Paula Barker, who chairs the all-parliamentary group, saying it's a depressing lack of meat on the bone with no real measures, you know, impressive targets, but no real measures on prevention, how things like that going to work. So 3 key sort of aims by 2030, but no real, as Paula put it, meat on the bone at the moment.
It's such a huge issue as well, like, because we obviously see this sort of sharp end of this, the very visible end of this one, with people rough sleeping on the street, which has gone up, by the way, particularly troubling during these cold months. But it will always stay with me. I did some filming at a school in Peckham, you know, talking to the teachers, talking to the kids. This is a school in South London. And they were just talking about how the temporary accommodation thing is such a big issue for those children. They're moving around all the time. Some of them have very, very long commutes to school. You're kind of thinking, what impact is that having on kids learning at that age?
And so many of them are children. I think 175,000 out of the 350 are kids. Yeah. And they're not in one place for a long time, as you say, so far away from their schools and places of work for adults. It's a massive issue.
Thanks very much.
Molly Malone there for us. We're going to take a break. Coming up later on the show, we're going to be talking about the most generous city in the country with the CEO of GoFundMe, the giving website. They've done the analysis and we've got the results for you.
By the very strong emphasis of the link between a democracy that works.
This is the press conference taking place in Oslo, of course, the day after Mrs. Mercado got the Nobel Peace Prize. She's due to speak, Maria Corina Mercado, any moment now in Oslo. As we were discussing earlier in the programme, of course, she is the opposition leader to President Maduro in Venezuela. Albeit not safe to be in her country and escaped to be there for this award late last night.
So that is the message that we are receiving of great importance for Venezuela, but also a message that has universal bearing. And this is all about fighting for fundamental human rights at a time when democracy is under threat. There are so many countries where this is relevant today. Unfortunately, there are fewer democracies, more authoritarian regimes. That is the trend. So I would like simply to salute you, Madam Laureate, for your struggle. It has cost you a lot. It costs you and your family and your people a lot. And I think what we heard from your daughter yesterday and from your family and the people who came here, thinking about those who are today in jail, those who suffered, those who have aspirations for democracy, that is a strong message of these Nobel Laureate days in Oslo. But Maria, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, and thank you all. And I want to speak to the Norwegian people, to European people, to the Venezuelan people. I would say to all citizens of the world in this hour, and assure you that I am very hopeful Venezuela will be free, and we will turn a country into a beacon of hope, an opportunity of democracy, and we will welcome not only the Venezuelans that have been forced to flee, but citizens from all over the world that will find a refuge, as Venezuela used to be decades ago. And as I mentioned, well, Ana Corina read yesterday, I believe that our experience in Venezuela conveys to the world a testimony that certainly in order to have peace, you require democracy. Democracy is the system that enables peace in a society. But you cannot have democracy without freedom. And freedom is an individual decision, a rational decision. And it's the sum of these individual conscious decisions that bring that collective ethos that creates the force, the strength, and the courage to fight for freedom, to defend it when you got it. And that courage comes from the things that truly matter in your life, the things that you love. And when you feel that those things are most in danger, then the courage increases. That's why I am convinced that peace ultimately is an act of love. And that's what brought me here. The love of millions of Venezuelans for our country, for freedom, and for our children. And I believe there's no other generation in the history of Venezuela that loves more freedom, our family, and our soul, our territory, the possibility of actually being in your homeland, in moving freely in your homeland, because we have lost that. And as I mentioned to you, the force that brought this country, our nation together, was this longing that we want our children back home. And we will not stop until they do that. And we give them a country in which they can live with dignity, with justice, and the responsibility that comes with freedom. So we have great admiration for Norway's institutions and democracy. We shared benefits that nature has given us, and we admire the way this society has used them on behalf of your people. Quite the contrary of what has happened in Venezuela. So we have to learn, and we have used Norway as an example several times during these decades. And believe me, we will turn Venezuela into that energy, technological, and democracy hub of the Americas. And we count on you. And I long for that day, and we will host all of you in a bright, democratic, and free country. And it's going to be soon. So thank you very much, and very honored and grateful to the Nobel Committee for this recognition to the Venezuelan people, through a great movement. I'm just one of that millions of people that form it. And I do believe it is a recognition to democracy as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So then we open up for questions. And
Maria Corrales speaking about peace ultimately being an act of love, and that there's been no other generation in the history of Venezuela that loves freedom more than the current one. Struck an ultimately optimistic tone about the speed with which democracy might arrive in Venezuela, but there she was speaking off the back of winning the Nobel Peace Prize in Oslo yesterday.
Well, we've been talking a lot about politics today, in particular, of course, those strikes by the resident doctors. And I'm pleased to say we can now speak to the opposition. The Shadow Energy Secretary, Shadow Minister for Equalities, Claire Coutinho, is here to join us. Thanks for being with us. Before we get to kind of your brief, I just wanted to get your reaction to what we've seen with these junior doctors strike, resident doctors, I should say. If West Streeting does manage to get it cancelled, will you, take your hat off to him?
Look, I think it would be a good thing if we could get this cancelled. It's the run-up to Christmas. We know that there's a very horrible flu going around and it's been a very difficult time for people and the NHS. And I think it would be great if the strike was called off.
It's interesting because one of the things that he's changing in this offer is to give UK-trained doctors priority for jobs over those from abroad. And honestly, if you look at the numbers, I was quite shocked. So we import 20,000 doctors a year, 1 in 6 of Nigeria's registered doctors. But we also turn 16,000 Brits away from training, basically because it's cheaper to do that. This change came in during the Conservatives, though, because you changed the rules post-Brexit, so young foreign doctors could apply for training in the same way as Brits. Was that a mistake?
Well, one of the things we said in the election is that we wanted to see more British doctors in the NHS. I think is correcting some of the numbers that we saw because, you know, you go through training. Basically, everyone in my family works for the NHS. I feel like I'm related to half the NHS some of the time. And you go through training. It's a very long process. So not being able to get a job at the end of it, I think, is very distressing for people. So I think that is a good change. But if you look at the challenge with what Wes has done, last year he gave doctors a 29% pay raise and he didn't ask for anything in return. And actually what we do know is that the BMA has become a very militant union. And what I don't want to see is patients being the chips on the table that they use every time to try and get more and more out of the government, because actually it's patients who will suffer in the end.
The question was it a mistake by the Conservatives?
Well, like I said, we were correcting that in the election when we said
it was a mistake.
Yeah, I definitely think that what we want is more people who've been through British training being able to get jobs. And I think no one on our side would say we got everything right in government. And like I said, it's a long period that you have to go through in training if you're in medicine. But just to come back to these strikes, one of the reasons that they're happening is because Wes went through a massive pay rise that he gave to doctors last year without asking for anything in return for patients.
You're here to talk about net zero.
Yes.
You're worried it's adding to bills. Is that the main thrust of it?
Well, look, we had a report out today from the National Energy Systems Operator, and their forecasts show that rushing to net zero, that pathway, will add £350 billion. That's their middle forecast to the cost of our energy system by 2050. Now, that's the equivalent to 0.4% of GDP every single year, or about £500 a household. That's an enormous cost, and it's a problem for the country in terms of living standards, but it's also a problem in terms of growth.
There's one other topic that I was really keen to talk to you about as well. It's something we've been doing a lot on this week on Sky News and on this programme in particular. After the report by Baroness Amos, laid bare how bad things are, I'll be completely honest, for women giving birth in the UK. I know that you've given birth recently, you've spoken about it publicly. What did you make of this focus on maternity care?
I think giving birth, as I'm sure you would agree, having a child is probably one of the most important things you do. I know for me, it's the most important thing I've done in my life. I would give up everything else in my life to have done this thing and have it go well. So I think it's really important that women can get care, have confidence in the care that they're receiving. And I think it must be terribly frightening for people who are incredibly pregnant, about to go and do the most important thing in their life and having to worry about the care that they might receive. Now, I should say in my case, that was a very rare case. I was one of 0.2% of new mothers who ended up in intensive care. And actually, the doctors and nurses that I had saved my life. I would not be sitting here with you talking about net zero or doctor strikes or anything else if I hadn't have had that care. And I want everybody to be able to both get that care and know that they're going to get that care as well and have that confidence.
I mean, it must have been terrifying. But it's interesting. So you were saying, actually, that the care you received, you wouldn't fault it? I think the critical bit for me is if I hadn't have had the doctors and nurses who looked after me in the way that they did, I don't think I would be here. And there's a risk my child wouldn't be here. We both had some difficulties. But what I don't want to see is women who are at that stage of pregnancy thinking about going in to give birth, and you know how it feels when you think about that. So it's probably one of the most scary things that I've done in my life for sure. And I don't want them to go in feeling frightened. So we absolutely need to get a grip on this and make sure that people can have confidence in maternity services. Yeah. How have you found the juggle since coming back to Shannon's dual role with the little one?
Well, look, there's definitely new things that I think about, like whether my clothes are covered in vomit and such things. But at the same time, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me. He is the absolute joy in my life.
Yeah, cheers to that. I can totally identify as well. It's been great to have you on. Thank you so much. Claire Cucino speaking to us there about everything from net zero to vomit-stained clothes. So there you go.
Fantastic to get all those different topics in there. Now, the number of people arriving in the UK illegally over the Channel is, in fact, dwarfed by the number of people overstaying their visas. That's people coming to the UK, then not leaving when they're supposed to.
So the Home Office doesn't actually keep data on the figures, but it is estimated to be hundreds of thousands of people. Our communities correspondent Lisa Holland has spoken to some of those who've overstayed.
This is Kingsbury in northwest London. Locals say the area has been transformed over the past 5 years as post-Brexit visa opportunities opened up for people coming from South Asia.
It looks like as if you are walking through mini Mumbai.
We've arranged to meet someone who lives in the community and helps with events here. He doesn't want to be identified, but raises serious concerns about visa abuse.
They just come with one thing in mind, overstay and work in cash.
And he claims economic migrants are regularly arriving who've paid strangers to pretend they're a friend or relative in order to obtain a visitor visa to get to Britain.
I come across so many people who has come this way into this country.
You think it's widespread, a stranger sponsoring a stranger?
It's a widespread, yeah. When I talk to these people, they literally tell me, oh, someone is coming tomorrow, day after tomorrow, is someone coming. I said, what happens if you get caught? They're laughing at us because they know Britain is a soft country.
Multiple community leaders and lawyers have told Sky News of their concerns about the number of people overstaying visas.
At this time, there's definitely in excess of about 200,000 people overstaying in the UK. It might even be closer to 3.
Extraordinary example.
We're going to come back to that story in a moment, but we just want to dip back into some of the latest comments coming from Maria Corina Machado, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, the opposition leader of Venezuela.
Until the end, and Venezuela will be free. And of course, it's worthwhile. And when I go back, the regime will, well, there are two possibilities. Certainly where the regime will be, but if it's still in power, certainly I will be with my people and they will not know where I am. We have ways to do that and take care of us.
Sorry. Well, so this is the end of this press conference. So
I think we're going to have another conference right now, and I'm going to speak in Spanish if I want to respect the decisions of the Prime Minister.
Great, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much.
Well, we didn't time that brilliantly. Sorry about that. We're going to give you the highlights from it to come later in the programme. Ali Bunkel, as you saw earlier in the show, is there for us, and we'll bring you all of the key takeaways to come. Next up, though, GoFundMe has released data that's shown that Liverpool is the most generous city in the UK in 2025. It comes after the extraordinary community response to the Liverpool FC attack and the continued support for victims of the Southport tragedy. I'm delighted to say that joining me now is the Chief Executive of GoFundMe, Tim Cadogan. Very good morning to you. Thanks for joining us, Tim.
Oh, great to be here. Thank you.
So you release this data every year, and this is based on where giving takes place.
Yes, this is donations per capita. So take Liverpool, we look at how many people donated in the city, we look at the total population of the city, and it's a measurement of how generous the city is. To give you a sense, in the UK, in the past year, 5.7 million people have donated on GoFundMe. That's more than the population of Scotland. And as you said, Liverpool came first, second year in the row, and Glasgow popped up from number 10 to number 2, largely fueled by incredible generosity for Sir Chris Hoy's Tour de Force cycling event, which happened a couple of months ago.
And so, wait, that's interesting. So going into the nuances, and we can then do broader picture. So that triggered more local donations in Glasgow. So this is not that he was the fundraiser in Glasgow. You base it on where people are that are giving.
The event was in Glasgow, and 3,000 people came to fundraise for the event, many of them doing the event physically, although it was also a global event, and Glaswegians really stepped up to support that event and what he was doing.
And Liverpool, this is 2 years in a row now.
Yes, it is.
Top of the list.
Yes.
And again, it comes down, sadly, to a lot of local issues that have triggered fundraising and then giving.
Yeah, some difficult issues, but people have responded and said, we want to help, we want to step up, we want to show our community is strong, that we're not alone in the face of these things. Saw an amazing fundraiser for the primary school where the incident happened. A new playground there was one of the big fundraisers.
In terms of the kind of other lessons from this, what are the overall trends over the last decade or so in terms of charitable giving in this country and further afield?
Oh my God! Over the last decade, it has grown very, very strongly on GoFundMe. We saw a big uptick in the pandemic as more people use digital tools for a whole variety of things in their lives, and we've seen it continue to grow really significantly here over the last few years since then. One of the trends has been more fundraising for essentials. So that can be rent, utilities, groceries, as people have felt the pinch of affordability. So we've seen that happen more and more here.
And talk me through a bit of that, because obviously that's it's not donating to a registered charity per se, but more people are kind of advertising that they need that help and or getting that support.
Well, that's exactly right. A family may be struggling to make it through the current month and may need help with the rent, may need groceries because costs are going up and incomes are not always matching those. And interestingly, this is a phenomenon that we're seeing in really all of the countries we operate in. Canada, Australia, the US, the UK, Germany, similar trend. Affordability-related essentials fundraisers are up about 20% year on year.
And in terms of the sort of overall tips you have, I mean, you must have analysed people who have successfully fundraised more than others. Are there tips you have to people who are about to be setting up their own pages?
Absolutely, and we build a lot of that into the technology. So we've been doing a lot of innovation, and we have been using AI and machine learning to implement that. But it is the classics of a good, clear story. What is happening to you? Why do you need the help? What will you do with the money? Pictures. A clear goal and the ability to move that goal as it grows. And then the fundamentals, thank yous, updates, telling people the story, showing them what's happening in their life as they're making progress, brings more people in.
Not to end on a negative note, but do you check if people are always true to their word?
We do.
And how often does that appear?
It happens very rarely, but it does happen. This is human nature and money is involved. So we have a lot of systems and procedures to identify what's legitimate. We check the money coming in. We check the money's going out to the right place. We do a lot of extra validation. And we do have a global giving guarantee. That means in that rare case where something isn't right, we always can refund the money so people can give with complete confidence that their money is safe and secure.
Tim, thanks so much for joining us. Great to see you.
Thank you.
As Liverpool is the most generous city in the UK on GoFundMe. Cheers.
Thanks.
Now, police are as in force in Germany ahead of tonight's Maccabi Tel Aviv Europa League match against Stuttgart.
Unlike last month's match against Aston Villa, supporters there haven't been banned, but there are some safety concerns. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris is in Stuttgart for us. Rob, get us up to speed. I wasn't aware of all of the details. Obviously, we're very aware of all the details that took place in Birmingham ahead of the Villa match. What are the kind of moving parts ahead of the game there in Stuttgart?
Well, most notably here in Stuttgart, they are allowing Maccabi Tel Aviv fans in. Police here telling me that they did not consider banning the Israeli fans, as so contentiously they did in Birmingham, an issue which is still something the Home Affairs Select Committee is looking at. They've asked the Chief Constable to come back. They've questioned those decisions over why they banned the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans over the disorder in Amsterdam a year ago. And yet here, police tell me they did consult Dutch authorities. This was after Maccabi Tel Aviv fans were attacked in Amsterdam. They themselves also attacked locals, but very disputed over just what happened. But here in Stuttgart, they've not referenced the Maccabi Tel Aviv fans posing a threat to the locals. That's something that West Midlands authorities did say was a concern which led to the decision to ban. Maccabi themselves do acknowledge there is a violent element of the fan base, and they do have races amongst that fan base to eliminate. But here in Stuttgart, what they said is the threat, although without any specific details, they said was from potential Islamic terrorism. But they say that there's no specific evidence of anything that's going to target this game, but they put a huge security operation in place. Last night in the centre, there were about 30 police vans and cars for a protest of about 50 people, and there was a partial no-fly zone here over the stadium tonight for the match, which has this, feels quiet now, but certainly around the centre of Stuttgart, a very large police presence.
Rob, thank you very much indeed. Rob Harris there for us in Stuttgart, where they're gearing up for that football match later.
Lots more still to come here on Morning. So we're going to be talking to Fraser Nelson about the doctor strike and also about your brain age and details around that.
The best thing about being a Sky News journalist? I'm going to take you behind the scenes here for Election Night Live. They have gone up and up. Big Sky News journalist. Ed Conway. Sky News, is anyone going to talk to us? Mortgage rates did go up very sharply during your time in office. Here it is. First off, just the scale of what we're looking at. Our data shows it's been happening. Question is, why it hasn't been stopped.
You want to talk business? Meet me in the On-Board Lounge. Flagship. Thank you.
Hello again. Now, in an attempt to avoid the doctor strike schedule for next week, the Health Secretary Wes Streeting has made an additional offer to the union that includes a pledge to double the number of training places for resident doctors.
We're joined now by the Times columnist Fraser Nelson, who's covered this story extensively, including writing an op-ed 4 or 5 days ago, which, Fraser, you might wonder whether the Health Secretary has read ahead of his latest offer. Give us a breakdown of the point you were making in it in terms of putting pay to one side, why some of the opportunities for young doctors and training doctors in the UK are perhaps not what they should be.
Well, if you set aside what the BMA union is saying on pay
and look at what the actual doctors are saying in the chat rooms and their various forums, they're not saying that a doctor's pay trajectory is terrible. Their problem is on the training pipeline, and it's a really big issue. I mean, right now we've got a system where the doctors get pretty much no say in where they're posted. It's assigned at random. But after the first 2 years of training, they need to apply for vacancies, and the application ratios are pretty bad. 5-to-1 for GPs, 24-to-1 for neurology. And there's a system here where they have to pretty much, even after passing the training, they need to weirdly reapply for their jobs, and they face international competition in the way that they didn't used to. So you can get doctors from all around the world competing with them, and it's a broken training pipeline. I was saying that if you actually listen to what the doctors are saying, then West Streeting could come up with a proposal that fixes the training, not the pay, and that most of the members, rather than the leadership of the BMA, would probably take that offer.
And look, it feels like he's been listening, right? Because he has made some more of these training places available. They want to pass this legislation that would give UK doctors priority over foreign doctors. Fraser, your column last Friday was "Try this cure for the trainee doctor crisis." Are you going to be like emailing the Health Secretary an invoice?
Well, look, I'm sure he does read the Times, and if he followed the Times' advice, the country would be far better run in general. But this is not genius. This is just common sense. This is just like, listen to what the junior doctors are saying. They genuinely have got a very big case here. The situation is far worse than it was 20 years ago. The Tories basically put in this post-Brexit workforce panic rule where they would allow foreign doctors to apply for training posts that previously were UK graduates would be preferred. Of course they need to be preferred because the training schedule is not complete. So if you do that and listen to doctors and genuinely, rather than go out the confrontational way about money and look instead at treating them with dignity, with respect, as if they're professionals in a valued workforce, not kind of pawns to be pushed to one side on a board, then you'll start to speak a language that the actual doctors will recognise and will understand. Now, with the flu surging in the way that it is, I don't think doctors feel at all easy about going off on strike at a time where the system could be in crisis. Already you're getting hospitals issuing statements saying that they're facing real shortages. I think doctors are looking for an excuse to find a common sense way out of the situation, and I think West Streeting has given them, in this offer, a common sense way out.
There's one thing that really kind of jumped out on reading your op-ed, Fraser, about a broader point, not necessarily the strike in the short term, but clearly there's long waiting lists. Clearly people would like to be able to see a doctor quicker. I mean, if we take something kind of fairly simple, a GP appointment, your article suggests there's a big supply of junior doctors, there's demand for GPs, and yet those two things aren't actually coming together. Is that because actually doctors don't really want to become GPs, or will something quite simple suddenly solve a massive problem that we have?
Oh no, it's quite. There has never been more demand amongst doctors after 6 years of training to apply to be a GP specialist. If you look at the applications to place ratio, it used to be about 1.5 to 1. Now it's 5 to 1. There's a surge in demand for doctors who want to settle down at a local clinic, but they're getting turned down at a staggering rate. 80% of their applications are unsuccessful. Now this makes no sense at all. But my overall point was that the NHS broken system is failing everybody. It's failing the patients, it's failing the taxpayers, and it's failing the doctors stuck in the middle of it. So this bureaucratic system means that the doctors can't serve in the way that they want to, and the patients are kept on huge waiting lists that are still twice what they were pre-COVID, 5 years after lockdown. And that is, I think, fixing this system isn't a concession to the unions. Fixing the system will help absolutely everybody. And I think West Streeting has taken some really important steps to do that, but there's still a lot more distance to go.
Fraser, thank you very much. Just got a little bit of breaking news to bring you now, because we are hearing that Ben Bradley, the former Conservative MP for Mansfield, leader of Nottingham Council, is defecting to Reform. Lee Anderson, the Reform MP, has described it as the signing of the season, that he'll be a great addition to the Reform Party family. So Ben Bradley, their former Conservative MP, joining Reform. And I think what we are seeing is an increasing number of people who are affiliated to the Conservative Party switching to Reform. We saw it, for example, with Jonathan Gullis, with Leah Nietzsche, two former Conservative MPs who lost their seats at the last election, defecting to Reform UK.
Which is, and these are, Ben Bradley, as you said, John Guys, high-profile names, but not as high-profile as a defecting MP.
Yeah.
I guess the sort of incentives are slightly different. When you'd failed to win your seat as a Conservative, you might think, well, in a sort of self-interested way, as opposed to necessarily being as high-profile as an MP. And
I think that there is it's a mixed picture here, because what Labour will do, which we've already seen them doing in response to this story, is they'll say, look, yeah, reform, they're just a vehicle for failed Tory MPs. It's just a Conservative Party in another guise. So I think that is potentially a bit of a risk for them as well.
But very interesting nonetheless. Right, ultrasound is widely used by medical professionals for diagnostic imaging, but there could be a new use.
So that ultrasound is basically high-frequency sound waves. They could now be used to keep our ageing brains young and also stave off diseases like dementia. So we can talk now to the bioengineering researcher Vanessa Drevenakova, who won the Medical Research Council's Max Perutz Award for her research into the use of ultrasound. This is quite exciting because ultrasound is like super safe, right? Now that's why they use it in pregnancy.
Yes, exactly. So ultrasound is very safe, and what we're seeing that we can use ultrasound to change the activity of our cells, and we can use it in different diseases such as Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and even cancers, and it's safe. However, it's different from the imaging ultrasound we are familiar with, because this focused ultrasound converges the sound waves, like converging a sunlight through a magnifying glass. And because of this concentrated sound energy, we can cause effects.
And talk us through a bit more. So you focus this on people's brains directly and have been testing that?
Yes, so in my lab, we're doing preclinical studies in animals, so we use mice. And we're looking if we can use this ultrasound before the onset of cognitive impairment, and whether we can delay the impairment of memory. But ultrasound's been used in clinical trials for Alzheimer's in the United States, and it's actually been FDA approved and also approved in the UK for the use for treatment of Parkinson's and essential tremor. So it's a very growing field, and it's very exciting.
So how quickly do you think it could become available in the UK then? What are the kind of hurdles?
Yeah, this is a very good question. I think very soon. There are still, because what we're doing, we're trying to stimulate the healthy brains, or stimulate the brains as we're getting to the point where we could have started having the changes. So this is a bit more difficult to get into clinic, and we need to have a really strong evidence showing that this actually has very positive effects in terms to get to the clinic.
So how would you choose who to give it to if you're giving it before brain function starts to diminish?
That's also a very good question. So ideally, we could give it to everyone. So what we're imagining is to promote, with ultrasound, our brains to keep healthier for longer and give it to people as a prevention. So we would really like to prevent the changes that happen. But of course, what also a lot of researchers are focusing on is the very early stages of Alzheimer's disease and the early signs of cognitive impairment.
And obviously the ageing brain diseases, I mean, this is such a concerning area, isn't it? It feels like, perhaps we've made some great medical strides with vaccinations, diseases, but actually it's these much more difficult things to kind of sort out that have proved harder.
Yeah, these diseases are very complex, and neurodegeneration is very complex. And our neurons can't communicate as much, and therefore we're losing memory. And one of the contributors to this is neuroinflammation, so our brain becomes more inflamed, and the immune cells play a very important role, and it's very good and important to keep these immune cells in the brain functioning like they were when they were in the healthy brain.
Vanessa, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Now, of course, all morning we've been touching back and forth on the story of Maria Corina Machado, the Venezuelan opposition leader who travelled to Oslo secretly, escaping Venezuela last night, just about in time to collect a Nobel Peace Prize. She's been speaking in the last hour and also addressing the level of support or not she has for President Trump and the US, who, of course, have been pursuing some interesting tactics to put pressure on the incumbent President Maduro of Venezuela.
Yesterday, the US seized a ship outside the coast of Venezuela. Would you welcome a US military intervention in Venezuela?
Look, some people talk about invasion in Venezuela, the threat of an invasion in Venezuela, and I answered, Venezuela has been already invaded. We have the Russian agents, we have the Iranian agents, we have terrorist groups such as Hezbollah, Hamas, operating freely in accordance with the regime. We have the Colombian guerrilla, the drug cartels that have taken over 60% of our populations, and not only involved in drug trafficking, but in human trafficking, in networks of prostitution. So this has turned Venezuela into the criminal hub of the Americas. And what sustained the regime is a very powerful and funded, strongly funded repression system. Where does that funds come from? Well, from drug trafficking, from the black market of oil, from arms trafficking, for human trafficking. We need to cut those flows. And once it happens and repression is weakened, it's over, because that's the only thing the regime has left, violence and terror. So we ask the international community to cut those sources, because the other regimes that support Maduro and the criminal structure are very active and had turned Venezuela into the safe haven for their operations into the rest of Latin America.
Very interesting there to hear from, of course, the opposition leader from Venezuela, whilst President Trump has been employing some pretty extreme tactics to put pressure on the incumbent dictator, President Maduro, including most recently seizing that oil tanker overnight.
Coming up, we are going to be continuing our coverage of those resident doctor strikes. Could they be called off before Christmas? Could they be delayed till January? There's still an awful lot of hurdles in the way, I have to say, before that happens. But thank you very much for watching us here on Mornings today. Up next, of course, more Sky News on those doctor strikes.
Thanks so much for watching. See you on Monday.